Necromancers are special mages who use black and dark magic. A long time ago, the Emperor of the Tanhen Empire sent 500,000 soldiers to wage war. In response, Kaizen, the main headquarters, only needed to send 10 necromancers to fight that mighty army with just 10 necromancers. But those 500,000 soldiers were quickly turned into corpses, and the Tanhen Empire was left with nothing. The rotting corpse of the former emperor suffered a tragic end. It was placed on the empire's own throne, and that's how the necromancers seized power in the new era and conquered half the continent. But another power also threatened their rule. The priests who ruled the other half of the continent were the only villains in the eyes of the necromancers who used divinity to serve the goddess of the hearth. The continent was maintaining a fragile peace between the two opposing forces, but none of that mattered in a place called Les Hill, a small town unknown even to its neighboring villages. And the main character, Simon Florentina, is the heir to this fiefdom. And of course his background was anything but simple. His father was a necromancer while his mother was a priest. Even Simon couldn't understand how his parents could have ever met. He thought he would live a peaceful life here. But he suddenly received a letter from a seemingly harmless lowly who was actually Nephthys Arctoid, the main culprit in turning the Tanhen Emperor's corpse into a puppet. She was also the corpse witch who had lived for over 300 years. The letter was an acceptance letter to Kizen Academy, the heart of the Dark Alliance, and the headquarters of the Necromancers. From that moment on, Simon's life changed completely after meeting Nephthys that day. Simon began the busiest week of his life, all to prepare for Kizen. His parents said school life would be very interesting and that he would have fun there. But Simon's sudden admission made them worried. For 3 days that week, Simon didn't sleep at all while creating a core with his father's magic. On the remaining days, he learned breathing techniques and how to use dark magic. A week later, Simon departed for Kaizen with his father. Amidst everyone's farewells on the way, Simon trained relentlessly under his father's guidance. Gather the magic floating in the air around you into your body and slowly create mana. Then transfer it into your core. That's all there is to it. Can you feel the mana solidifying inside your body? Seeing his son nod, Richard continued. Now guide that mana through your hand. That's right. Release it through your fingertips. Soon Simon created a black substance on his fingertip. That is the source of a necromancer's power darkness. The biggest difference between a mage and a necromancer is dark energy. Mana has properties similar to gas. It gradually loosens and dissipates into the air. In other words, darkness can be a solid or a liquid, so it easily coalesces and takes on different forms. So if you use this property of darkness, you can form it into a shape like this. Those who practice magic based on darkness are called necromancers, Richard explained while demonstrating for his son. It seemed Richard was no amateur. He understood dark magic very well. And because time was short, Richard focused only on teaching his son the basics of extracting darkness and channeling it into his core. Simon then tried to follow what he had just been taught. Soon he was able to extract a large amount of darkness and control it at will. Witnessing this, Richard couldn't help but be amazed. Unbelievable. It usually takes 6 months to 2 years for a necromancer to shape dark energy, but Simon succeeded in just 3 days. I knew he was talented, but such explosive talent can backfire. I postponed building his core, hoping he wouldn't repeat the mistakes I made when I was young. But now is the time for his talent to shine. From the look in Richard's eyes, you could see how proud he was of his son. But he was also a little worried about the times ahead. Just then, the dark energy in Simon's hand turned into a beautiful blue flame. He happily showed his father, thinking it was some kind of special power. But it turned out to be just a color. It's beautiful, but it has no effect. A moment later, the carriage stopped. They had arrived. Simon was surprised, as the journey should have been much longer. Richard got out of the carriage and explained, "This is the border of the Reston Kingdom. I'll be leaving you here. I'm sorry, but I couldn't tell you beforehand. I can't enter Reston territory. It's a long story. From here on, you'll have to decide everything on your own. But don't worry, I guarantee. You can do better than anyone else, and I'm proud of you." Though reluctant, Simon understood it was time to leave his parents' embrace and live his own life. After bidding his father farewell, he continued his journey to Kizen Academy. A week later, in the Preston Kingdom, Simon arrived at the capital, London. It was a huge city, with countless people and dark creations on the streets. According to the instructions, Simon had to go to 239 Camo Road to meet his guide, but since it was his first time in the city, Simon had no idea where to go. With no other choice, he asked a nearby woman for directions, but her face scared Simon to death. Although such things were normal with dark magic, Simon was still trembling with fear. After her detailed instructions, he felt a bit more at ease and bowed his thanks before leaving. As Simon walked away, a bald man approached the woman. It looked like he was plotting something. Following the directions, Simon was struggling to find his guide. Just then, the bald man from before approached and said, "Hey, kid, are you looking for 239 Camo Road? Or to be precise, cell 16AG, right?" Simon replied, "Oh, yes, that's right." "You must be the guide sent by Howell." The bald man immediately played along. "Yes, that's right. I'm the guide sent by Howell. You were late, so I figured you were lost and came to find you." After introductions, he said his name was Jolie and led Simon away. "Follow me, I'll take you to your lodging. I'm glad I found you before you ran into any trouble. There are a lot of scammers here who try to trick gullible travelers, you know. Pickpockets, merchants who rip you off, that kind of thing." Simon saw through it all, but didn't expose him yet. He followed the bald man into an alley and suddenly asked, "So are you planning to scam me too?" The bald man acted flustered. "Ha ha ha, I don't know what you mean." But Simon cut him off. "You tend to look at the ground and you keep touching your vest pocket. You're checking to see if your thing is still there, aren't you? Judging by the width of the pocket and the wrinkles, you have a knife in there," the bald man tried to explain. "Don't get me wrong, it's just for self-defense." But he had no idea that Howl was just the name of a species of goat in Les Hill. Seeing his plan exposed, the bald man trembled with rage. He pulled out his knife and yelled, "So you knew and you still followed me? Who the hell are you?" "Damn it, I don't care who you are. You'll be begging us for mercy soon enough." Just then, a group of men suddenly appeared surrounding Simon. It seemed the bald man never intended to act alone. He pointed his knife at Simon and shouted a threat. "Now put everything you have on the ground. Your clothes, your bag, everything." When Simon didn't comply, one of them rushed forward with a knife. "Hey, country boy, I don't think you get the situation. Do we look like we're joking?" But they had no idea they'd picked the wrong person. Knowing it was a trap, Simon still followed the man into the alley, which showed how confident he was in his abilities. With just a simple sidestep, Simon dodged the blade. He instantly grabbed the mugger's wrist and squeezed, making him scream in pain. I sometimes see people like you in my territory. Scumbags who blend into the crowd and cheat people with so-called protection fees. As the succeeding lord, it's my duty to clean up filth like you, the bald man yelled. "Ha, noble are you? All the more reason not to spare you. Everyone get him." Immediately after, a mob of thugs suddenly emerged from the alley. Seeing their numbers, even Simon felt this was not good at all. "Sorry, Dad. Looks like I'll be getting to Kizen later than planned." Just then, a mysterious person approached. "Ah, there you are. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Since you didn't show up, I had to come and find you myself. Looks like you're dealing with some trivial matters." The woman exuded an extremely dangerous aura. It seemed she was the guide Simon was supposed to meet. Although scared, the bald guy tried to act calm. He did not dare to charge in himself, but instead egged on his underlings. "Don't worry, we have the upper hand. Let's deal with them quickly and go." But that was his biggest mistake. This woman is a necromancer. You should count again. You must have noticed that building over there is a skeleton shop, right? Dark magic spread through the air, turning the pile of dry bones into skeleton soldiers. By the time the bandits realized it, it was too late. "We did not know you were a great necromancer. Please spare us." When asked which guild he was from, the bald guy immediately confessed, "The Clavin Guild, we are from the Clavin Guild." The woman said coldly, "Humph! From such a large guild and you are robbing poor travelers. Go tell that to Clavin, put your hands behind your back, and crawl to the security headquarters with your face to the ground to turn yourself in." The bald guy's face went pale as he repeatedly begged for mercy. The woman suddenly radiated a dense, murderous aura. "What is this? Are you trying to order me around? If you send a substitute or if your face is not scraped, I swear in the name of Kizen, I will erase your guild from this continent." Hearing this, the bald guy trembled. "I'm sorry, I will remember your words." He knew what a necromancer could do, especially one from Kaizen. After dealing with the nuisance, the woman's attitude instantly became friendly. "You are Simon Florentina, right?" Simon still did not understand what was going on, so he answered awkwardly, Yes, that is me." "Thank you for your help, but who are you?" The woman blushed and introduced herself. "What do you think? I am your real guide. Let's go. My mother is waiting." Simon was then pulled to the town square, but he never expected the person she mentioned to be Neptis. Looking at them, you would never guess they were mother and daughter. To avoid a scolding, Neptis changed the subject. "Simon, you must be tired from the long trip. I hope you learned something from Richard Simon, then manifested his blue darkness." This rather surprised Neptis and her daughter Lauren. It had been a long time since they had seen anything like it. But looking at the darkness, it did not seem very stable yet. That is something that will improve during his time at the academy. Neptis then winked at her daughter. "I will leave the new student in your hands. I have faith in you." After all, Lauren was quite used to this sort of thing. So she readily accepted, and with that, Neptys ran off to get ice cream again, leaving everything to her daughter. Lauren then introduced herself. "My name is Lauren. I am a student at Kizen, just like you. Shall we get going then? Let's go shopping for the new semester." First, Simon was taken to a bookstore and handed a pile of books as heavy as a mountain. A bewildered Simon asked Lauren, "I don't have to learn all this in my first year, do I?" Lauren smiled while grabbing another book. "Of course not. This is Kaizen. You have to master all of it in the first semester. Now stop your whining. Here, take this book on toxicology. The last one is Dark Energy Studies. I will go get it. You wait here." And so Simon was left alone with a giant pile of books. Looking at the others his age, he felt even more excited for his upcoming school life. After all, he had been studying by himself since he was a child. Just then, an unfamiliar girl suddenly rushed toward him. Simon instinctively dodged, causing her to crash into the bookshelf. Fortunately, Simon managed to shield the pile of books with his body, preventing the stack from falling on the girl. It was like a scene from a novel where the hero saves the damsel. "Are you okay? I'm sorry I was distracted and got in your way. Could you help me put the books back? We are going to be in trouble." By now, the girl was completely captivated by Simon's good looks. She stared at him, without blinking, already imagining a house and children. When she found out Simon was also a new student at Kaizen, she happily introduced herself. "I am a new student too. My name is Cindy Vivaci, and you are seeing her." Simon also happily introduced himself, as neither of them had made any new friends yet. So they became acquainted. Cindy was already completely smitten with Simon. "Can I say hi to you when I see you at school?" Just as it seemed they would become good friends as they were saying goodbye, Simon suddenly spoke up. Wait a minute, Cindy. Can I have my wallet back?" Talk about a plot twist. Cindy's demeanor changed instantly. "Ha, I can't believe I got caught. I even used my spiritual power to steal it." "How did you know?" Simon replied. "I just saw my wallet floating in the air a moment ago." Hearing this, Cindy moved closer to question him. "Huh? You actually saw that? Are you kidding me? Are you also planning to major in spiritual power studies?" Simon said he had not decided on his major yet. Suddenly, Cindy got excited. "I knew it. Kaizen is on a whole other level." "Wow, I can't believe it. Kaizen must be full of people like you. I am so excited for school to start. If we are in the same major, we will get to see each other for 3 years. Let us be rivals then." Simon was at a complete loss for words. Is this how a thief should act when caught red-handed? After dancing around a bit, Cindy tossed the wallet back to Simon and left by passing through the bookshelf. "Here is your wallet back. I am really looking forward to it. Do not you dare pretend you do not know me at school." Just then, Lauren came back saying they were out of the introductory Dark Energy Studies book. Seeing Cindy leave, she asked curiously, "By the way, who was that girl? Did you already make a friend?" Simon's embarrassment made Lauren even more curious. "You do not have to be so shy. You can be honest with me. You are acting like you have a crush on her or something." Simon was speechless. He had almost had his wallet stolen by her. "It is only your first day in the capital, and you have already run into robbers and a thief. Such bad luck." After buying all the books, Lauren decided to take Simon to buy a bag. And of course, it was not just any ordinary bag. It was a bag often used by necromancers called a magic storage, or more simply, a subspace. As soon as he heard this, Simon's eyes lit up. He was very interested in necromancers' magic items, things he never saw back home. The moment he saw Lauren, the shopkeeper recognized a regular customer and greeted her enthusiastically. "I heard you bought a bag not too long ago. I assume you are looking for one for this gentleman." Lauren immediately stated her request. "Yes, he is new. So I am looking for a bag with the fewest restrictions possible. Do not show us any subspaces that require walls or a floor. We often fight on open plains." As someone with plenty of knowledge and experience, the shopkeeper immediately presented a ring. "You are right. You think of everything, Miss Lauren. In that case, I will show you an item that is not yet on the market. It is for your eyes only. Put the ring on and channel your dark energy into it. You will then feel like you are touching a handle. Pull it out." As Simon followed the instructions, a vast space opened up beneath the ground. This subspace is a creation of Galen Eclipse, the young master craftsman of the new generation. It can hold up to 4,000 UB. This subspace can be opened on the ground regardless of the terrain, even on sloped or rough terrain. The space inside has 7 enchantments, including a first-class preservation charm and temperature control charms. An invisibility charm is activated to hide your location from enemies. And of course, it also has an ejection feature. This item is absolutely incredible. But Simon was quite worried about the price he would have to pay at this shop. When he heard the price of 5,000 gold from the shopkeeper, Simon froze. That tiny item was worth Les Hill's entire annual budget. But Lauren did not hesitate and confirmed the purchase instantly. Seeing Simon's worried expression, she explained, "Do not worry, this is my mother's money, not mine. I do not know the details, but my mother owes your parents a great deal. Think of this as her repaying that debt, so please do not refuse. Although Simon felt awkward, he was persuaded by Lauren. He decided to study hard at the academy to repay Neptys. After buying all the necessary supplies, Lauren took Simon on a tour of the capital that evening. Over dinner, Lauren mentioned a few things he should be aware of. You should know 30% of the students at Kaizen are commoners. So do not think about using your status to push people around. Kaizen is based purely on merit. Tomorrow is your first day. Any questions? Simon remembered his conversation with Cindy and asked about the majors. Lauren was happy to explain. Majors, you ask? That is an interesting question. You'll take 9 subjects in your first semester of freshman year, 7 core subjects, and 2 electives from the second semester. You can sign up for the electives you want, and by your second year, you have to choose a major. It means you have to quickly figure out what you're good at. I recommend you decide on your core subjects first, and then just focus on those. When there is group homework, students with clear strengths become more popular. Simon had already started to imagine what life at the academy would be like. When asked if he had thought about a major yet, he replied, "Well, I think I'm a little interested in spiritualism. What you showed me this morning was pretty impressive." Hearing that, Lauren got a little excited. "Oh, spiritualism is awesome. It has that authentic sorcerer vibe. One of the professors at Kaizen is Professor Hong Peng, you know." After that, the two of them talked until late at night before heading back. "If my mom finds out you're late for school tomorrow because we were out so late, she'll kill me." Simon then thanked her for everything. "Thank you for today. I had a great time. I don't think I'll ever forget this day." Lauren also felt very happy about today. Before going home, she told Simon a shocking secret. "Actually, Simon, there's something I have to tell you. You know, I didn't mean to trick you, but I didn't tell you at the right time. I'm also a new student. Let's be friends at school, okay? I'm really leaving now, bye." Simon's jaw dropped in shock. He had no idea what was going on and just stood there stunned for a while. The poor guy had been tricked 3 times in a row on the same day he left home. On top of that, he was tricked by a girl twice. Life is stormy once you leave your parents. The next day, Simon went to the dock to go to Kaizen. Everyone here had their own unique style. Simon was probably the most normal one. Yesterday, Lauren had told him that she would take a different route, so the next time they met would be at school. After confirming his identity, Simon was allowed to board the boat. At this moment, he noticed something strange. The bow of the boat was somehow pointing towards the mainland. What a strange way to moor a boat. Just then, a loud young man attracted everyone's attention. There must be some mistake. "I'm at the top of the waiting list, yet not a single person gave up their admission. Is this how Kaizen operates? Contact Kaizen. There's definitely been a mistake," a purple-haired young man shouted. He grabbed the person in charge by the collar and kept shouting. The people around began to whisper, "This happens every year." There are always kids like that. The ones who can't accept the results, but he's at the top of the wait list. He must be really disappointed. The purple-haired young man kept shouting, "I am Lucius Caron, heir to the earldom of the Reston Kingdom. Contact Kaizen headquarters." Now this is an order. But even after revealing his background, it had no effect. "Please go back. Your name is not up the admission list." Unable to control his anger, Lucius grabbed the person in charge by the hair and was about to throw a punch. "How dare you, you servant!" At that moment, Simon grabbed his hand and stopped him. "Stop it." But this made Lucius even more furious. "Who the hell are you? Let go!" Simon didn't bother to argue and directly used his strength to squeeze, making Lucius scream in pain. Even though he was on his knees trembling, Lucius didn't lose his arrogance. "You brat, you want to die. Do you know who my father is?" Just as Simon was about to let him know who his father was, a stern voice rang out. "What's going on?" The owner of this voice was Professor Silas. As soon as they saw him, everyone suddenly fell silent. Only Lucius stubbornly continued to shout, "Please, this isn't a joke. Call Neptys right away. I'm at the top of the waiting list. There must be a mistake with these admission results. Do you think you can treat me like this?" Silas didn't say a word. He just snapped his fingers. Lucius was instantly covered in a pool of blood. "I don't have time for this. Everyone on the boat, you too." The students who witnessed this scene buzzed with discussion. "That's blood dark magic. First-year students also get to take his class right." Only Simon was concerned about Lucius's condition, as he was about to ask Silas cut him off. "Don't worry, he's still breathing." Hearing that, Simon felt relieved and boarded the boat. When everyone was seated, Silas instantly enveloped the entire boat in magic. Simon was still wondering how the boat could possibly set sail, when suddenly a tidal wave crashed down. A giant whale jumped out of the water and swallowed the boat. In an instant, it was an Andes. It lives underwater and follows Kaizen's orders. The underworld whale is a sea monster that can travel to any sea in the world and will swallow any place Kaizen designates. And once a year, it takes Kaizen's new students to school at a terrifyingly fast speed. After traveling for a while, the students were allowed to get off the boat and stroll around inside the whale's belly. The weather in here was quite pleasant, and there were even people living here just then. The guy sitting next to Simon decided to strike up a conversation. "You were amazing just now. It was a difficult situation, but you still dared to step in, and, you're also very humble. Anyway, I'm a new student, just like you. My name is Rowan." After getting acquainted, Rowan asked Simon how he passed the entrance exam. Hearing about the entrance exam, Simon's mind went blank. "An exam? I didn't take any. Neptus just came and gave me an admission letter. What if I get dragged into an issue about fairness if I tell him how I was admitted?" After thinking for a moment, Simon decided to give a vague answer. "Oh, well, I did something similar, the one related to darkness, you know." Just then, an announcement saved Simon. "Attention all students, please return to the boat and take your seats. We will be arriving shortly." As he boarded the boat, Simon noticed the current was getting stronger. It seemed like something was about to happen once everyone was inside. Silas once again enveloped the boat with his magic. At this time, strong waves caused the boat to shake violently. Announcements were also made continuously. "Attention new students, the boat may experience some turbulence upon arrival, so please remain seated and do not stand up for your safety. Please hold on to the handle in front of your seat to prepare for any impact." But this announcement seemed to be useless. Everything was already flying all over the place. When the shaking stopped, Simon opened his eyes and saw an incredibly majestic sight. The whale had stopped and surfaced. The island in front of it was the legendary Kizen. At this moment, Silas dispelled his magic and brought the boat into position. The new students were then instructed carefully. "New students, please, line up in rows of 4. Once everyone is in line, we will distribute the uniforms. Male students will use the changing room on the right. Female students to the left. You have 5 minutes to change and reassemble outside." The stylish uniform was exactly as his father had described, which made Simon very happy. He could even wear this uniform to a party, not only that the uniform was also enchanted with magic. It had a dual function as a combat suit and was even sturdier than regular armor. After changing, everyone gathered again and headed to the lecture hall. After seeing the girls' uniforms, the boys couldn't stop staring. Typical male instinct. On the way, Rowan shared some information with Simon. Kizen has 1,000 students in the first year, but that number is cut down to 300 in the second year. By the third year, there probably aren't even 150 left. This level of competition is really fierce. Simon's head was spinning after hearing that he had only been exposed to dark magic for a few days. He didn't know if he could make it. Rowan then introduced a few outstanding individuals to keep an eye on Senegal, the rightful heir of the Ivory Tower. And the famous rising stars are also here. That's Darkwyn Carradine, and under him is Jay Sanders. The one drawing attention with his huge build is Sathameyer, the half-giant, and the top student of the first year this year is Lauren, AKB 48. Everyone thinks she got special treatment because she's Neptus's only daughter, but I heard she took the entrance exam and passed with a decent score. She didn't get the top score on the exam, but everyone already knows. She's the best student in the class. Just then the hall lights dimmed and a voice spoke out, "Everyone, your attention, please. We will now begin the welcoming ceremony for new students. Congratulations on passing the entrance exam as a proud member of Kizen, and finally we expect the very best from all of you. Furthermore, please remember not to enter the forest next. We will introduce the professors who will be in charge of teaching the first year." Then the professors started to come out and were welcomed by all the students, but Simon only noticed that Neptus was not among them. Rowan then explained that such a brilliant headmaster would not come to a welcome ceremony for mere freshmen like this. It would be an honor to meet her even in the 3rd grade, but in Simon's impression, that was not right at all. Next on the agenda is the oath of the student representatives. The top male and female students will step up to the podium and take the oath. The first one is special admission student number 2, Seni Endok, and special admission student number 1, Simon Palentia. When Simon heard his name called, his jaw dropped in shock. He had not been told beforehand that he had to go up on the podium to speak. In front of all the new students like this, Rowan beside him was even more surprised. He never expected that his new friend was actually the top one. With no other choice, Simon had to stand up and go to the podium. The other students saw this and started to gossip. They were curious how such an ordinary-looking guy could get the top spot. Seeing that Simon seemed nervous, Sane reminded him that it would be fine as long as he read the written words. Simon then took a deep breath and read aloud after Senna, "We solemnly swear, blah blah." After a series of boring ceremonies, the first class started immediately. And as expected, Simon became the center of attention in class. He ranked first in the special admission right. Palentia, wasn't it? I have never heard that name before. What family is that from? Simon was extremely nervous. He was afraid that if the fact that he got in through the back door was discovered, he would be doomed. Are people gossiping about me? I am starting my first day of school feeling anxious and restless. I wonder how many classes there are today. To ease his tension, Simon opened a book to read, Summoning is the magic father used, which means if I study this subject, I can become a person like Father Richard was the ideal role model in Simon's heart. He hoped that he would become a man like his father one day. Just as Simon was daydreaming, a handsome man walked into the classroom. Some people associate necromancers with the dark and gloomy image of handling corpses in the dark. But that is all in the past. Most contemporary necromancers are very intelligent, practical, stylish, and trendy. This is the new generation of necromancers, and the person who just entered is the first-year theology professor. Bahil Amagar is a prime example of that. A rising young necromancer who became a member of the Crow. Kizen's key combat squad in his late 20s, an extremely popular idol in the eyes of Kaizen's students after he reached the center of the podium. Bahil spoke up, "Welcome, everyone. This year I will be in charge of first-year theology. I am Bahil Amagar." Just with the introduction alone, the students could not contain their excitement. The whole crowd of students stood up and screamed as if they were seeing their idol. After the students settled down, Bahil continued, "Now let's take attendance. This is probably the first time you have all met, so how about when I call your name, you stand up and introduce yourselves?" Afterwards, each student stood up and gave a brief introduction about themselves. And not surprisingly, when it was Simon's turn, the whispers rose again somewhere in the classroom. After attendance was taken for all students, Bahil picked up chalk and wrote on the board, "I will start with a basic question. Why must we study theology? Does anyone know the definition of a curse?" As soon as he finished, James immediately raised his hand. "A curse is a form of dark magic that can maintain our strength while weakening the opponent, sir." Bahil was very pleased with this answer. "Very good, James, but some students might not be able to picture it. If we simply say weakening the opponent, so let me give you an example. If there are two knights with the same skill level, they begin to duel and fight with all their might, they tire each other out and just wait for the other to make a mistake. They have exchanged about 20 blows, but the opponent has not surrendered at that moment. One of the knights shouts and glares at the other with a menacing look. The killing intent makes the opponent's face turn pale, and finally the sword cuts across his shoulder. He starts bleeding and his movements become shaky. The knight begins to seize the chance to win. He pressures his opponent, attacking his legs to stop him from moving, throwing sand in his eyes and using the scabbard to hit his helmet to distract him. The fight becomes intense. And finally, the knight beheads his opponent, his head falling to the ground. With the verbal description and illustrations, all the students were engrossed in the example and concentrating hard. After giving the example, Bahil looked towards the students and asked, "Do you understand? Even the most primitive and barbaric armed conflict is just a series of actions to weaken the opponent and achieve victory step by step. Now I will demonstrate to you how modern necromancers fight the way a contemporary necromancer would take this person down. It is with just a single move and they win." After hearing that, all the students exclaimed in amazement. According to him, necromancers are so terrifying and cool. Bahil then continued his lecture. "A curse is the simplest and mildest among the various dark magics. Another of its attributes is its fast activation. Moreover, it only takes a small amount of force to effectively make an opponent tremble at this point." Bahil suddenly stopped and walked towards a student before the student could understand what was happening. He was knocked down on the spot by Bahil's curse spell. Then he pulled out a knife and struck a cool pose. This is how modern necromancers fight. This pose directly captivated all the students in the class. "The professor is so cool. Theology is the best. This is truly the art of high-level psychological manipulation." After lifting the curse from the student, Bahil continued, "I do not know which major you will decide to sign up for, but I bet more than 80% of you will continue to choose my course in the second semester. Theology has perfect compatibility with other subjects. I encourage you to train your special abilities, while still cursing your opponent when the opportunity arises. That is the most effective way to achieve victory. I personally think theology is the core of modern necromancy. The reason behind this is the priests, because theology is the most optimal method to fight against our enemies. Your main one speaking of this issue." The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Everyone knew how strained the relationship between necromancers and priests was. Bahil continued, "I ask you, all necromancers have curses and priests have blessings. The difference is that one buffs while the other debuffs the target. Now, can anyone explain why a curse is better than a blessing?" Once again, James was the first to raise his hand, James Victoria answering, "Sir, casting a curse is faster than praying, so a curse can stack its weakening effect faster on the target." After hearing that, Bahil smiled. "That is an interesting opinion. But you are wrong. If we are only talking about casting speed, scholars agree that when a curse is aimed at a resistant opponent, it is slower than a ray of blessing from a priest. Anyone else?" At this moment, a hand rose from the back, Hector Morin answering, because it is almost impossible for someone who has been weakened to recover. "If they only train?" This answer made Bahil very satisfied, and he decided to remember this student's name. Hector is right. That is because curses do not lose their effectiveness when people train. We all train ourselves under normal conditions. Our skills depend on whether we can perform well or not. When all environmental factors are under our control, however, humans are more sensitive creatures than we think they can break down from the slightest changes. In other words, you do not need to cut off the entire arm of an archer aiming at you to win. You can obstruct his vision with conjunctivitis, make him vomit, mess up his sense of distance, or divert his attention with another object. With these methods, you can avoid the arrow aimed at you. Necromancers have many ways to disrupt an enemy's state. Just think about it when you are tired or have a stomachache. Not many people can fight back against curses, right? You can only run away. So remember, we must find ways to weaken the opponent instead of strengthening ourselves. Now we will learn how to cast curses on our own. Immediately after, some teaching assistants brought out the cursing tools. To each student, Simon looked extremely bewildered upon seeing these things. He did not expect to be learning magic from the very first session. You don't know a damn thing. Bahil's words seemed to mock Simon. It is a bit embarrassing for a Kaizen student to use an adjustment device, but since this is our first class, it is unavoidable. It can be used to solve the problem, but you should not depend on it too much. Remember to be careful. Simon did not even know what the thing in front of him was. Then how can I even use it? He's on the verge of tears now. At this time, Bahin began the practical exercise. We will now practice the exhaustion curse. Grasp the handle of the regulator and channel dark energy into the key mold to form a circle. A successful magic circle depends on how perfectly you create the ancient script. Simply put, the ancient script is a set of characters containing magical power. Using dark power to draw the ancient script can enhance the current magical effect. Once you've completed the magic circle, raise it into the air. Simon focused and followed the instructions, and he succeeded on his first try. As he was celebrating, he suddenly realized something was wrong. The other students' magic circles were beautiful and perfect, while his was distorted and ugly and eyesore. As expected, that failed creation didn't last long and collapsed immediately. And once again, Simon was mocked by the professor. I see some students' magic circles have fallen. That happens when you haven't refined your dark energy enough or when your connection to the magic circle weakens. Try again. As for those of you who can maintain the magic circle in the air, we will proceed to the main part. With your regulators, aim at the plant on your desk and cast the curse. If there's a noticeable change in the plant, then the magic circle is effective. Soon, a few students succeeded on their very first try. Meanwhile, Simon couldn't even create a proper magic circle. Bahin then continued, I'm starting to see a difference in your skills. If you succeed, continue practicing to increase your speed in completing the circle. Once you're satisfied with your speed, practice creating it without the regulator. The number of students who successfully cast the curse gradually increased, and they began more advanced training. Meanwhile, Simon kept failing repeatedly at the first step. What's the problem? Why am I the only one failing? Am I doing something wrong? Suddenly, Simon recalled what Neptus and Lauren had said about his dark flame. That's right. If I'm still not proficient in using mana like Neptus and Lauren said, I should start with the basics. The professor said the error was insufficient refinement or a weak connection. So instead of channeling mana directly into the core, I'll try to gather as much as possible first. Then I'll transfer it all into the core at once. After a moment of concentration, Simon's dark flame flared up. The dark energy had become more stable. Now I just have to try again before the magic circle collapses. Finally, Simon's magic circle stabilized and was a success. Casting the weakening curse on the plant, his first success made Simon overjoyed. But at the back of the class, someone named Hector was glaring daggers at him. It seems he doesn't have a good impression of the person who placed first like Simon. Simon had just succeeded once when the professor signaled for it to end. Simon had just breathed a sigh of relief when Bahin looked at the list and spoke. For the remainder of the class, we will apply the magic we've learned. Today, in a practical application. I see we have the student who ranked first in the special selection in this class. Simon Florentia, please step forward. All eyes immediately turned to Simon. Because everyone was so focused earlier, they didn't know how miserably he had been failing. They were all curious to see how talented the top-ranked student would be. Bahin continued searching the list for another name. Let's see who would be a worthy opponent for our outstanding #1 student. I see there are also some students with very impressive entrance exam scores. Hector Mo, please come forward. Upon being called, Hector stepped forward without hesitation. He was extremely confident in his abilities, standing majestically with his arms crossed. I will explain the rules. The only curse you may use is exhaustion. Complete it and cast it on your opponent. The first person whose knee or butt touches the ground loses. The teaching assistant then gave regulators to both of them, but Hector suddenly raised his hand. Professor I will complete it without using a regulator. Seeing this, Baheen smiled brightly. What an admirable attitude. He seems quite intelligent despite that rough, thuggish appearance. After I mentioned not using the regulator, he proposed another way to showcase his skills and impress me, and Hector has achieved his goal. When Simon was asked, he chose to use the regulator, which was to be expected. Just a moment ago, he had to clench his butt with all his might just to succeed. Trying to do it without one now would be certain failure. But this left a bad impression on Baheen. He gave Simon a contemptuous look before quickly changing his expression to a smile. All right, then you may begin on my signal. Good luck to you both. Ready, begin. Simon immediately grabbed the regulator and focused on channeling dark energy into the mold. Don't worry, just do it like you did before. You can do it, just a little more. But before Simon's magic circle was even halfway done, he was hit by his opponent's spell. Hector could create a fast and precise magic circle without needing a regulator. He was now basking in the praise of the other students. Simon, despite feeling tired, tried to focus on completing his magic circle. After struggling for a moment, he finally completed it. He made the magic circle float, but before he could do anything, its structure suddenly collapsed. Casting a spell now would be useless, so Simon had no choice but to start over. But before he could even start again, he was hit by several more exhaustion spells from Hector. Simon immediately felt the curse's power and almost fell to the ground. The other students witnessing this began to chatter. It's over. That's the 5th time already. Did he really rank first? I don't know. He can't even cast a single spell. Although Simon tried his best to stand, he only received his opponent's scorn. Give up. You look pathetic. Do you want to know how this will end? Hector had no intention of holding back and cast the exhaustion spell again. The pressure on Simon grew, becoming almost unbearable. Baheen was calmly observing the match. Hector is truly a rare gem. His talent is one thing, but this kid also has the mindset of a Kaizen student. He's going to become an outstanding student. He'll be outstanding by the time he's a 3rd year. On the other hand, this first-ranked student has no preparation or basic knowledge of dark magic, let alone practical experience. Why would Neptune give him the top spot? The top 4 students get an official invitation to join Kaizen without taking the notoriously difficult entrance exam. These people are supposed to be prodigies of the century, especially the one who ranked first in the special selection personally chosen by Neptus, who is destined to become a leading figure in their field. But I just can't see his potential. If I had to point out one thing, it would be his endurance. A normal student his age would have collapsed after the 4th exhaustion spell. But he has endured 9 exhaustion spells so far. This kid is still persisting with his spell even though he can barely stand, so I guess his mental fortitude is very strong. But that's just what a combat magic professor would want, because they value physical and mental strength, which has nothing to do with my specialty. Just then, Simon managed to raise his magic circle and use the exhaustion spell on his opponent. Baheen was immediately surprised, not because Simon had succeeded under such difficult conditions, but because of the power of the curse. The one who felt it most clearly was Hector. He almost fell to his knees from just a single hit. Can the exhaustion spell be this powerful? It didn't feel like this during practice. Are you kidding me? I can't lose just because I got cursed once. I have the upper hand. I can handle this nuisance. Hector then used all of his strength to stand and cast the exhaustion spell one more time. This was Simon's limit. He couldn't take it and fell to his knees. The other students immediately cheered in admiration. Baheen announced the result. The match is over. The winner is Hector Mo. Both of you did very well. It was an interesting match. After dispelling the curse on Simon with a snap of his fingers, Baheen declared the class over. After class, a female student approached with a question, but Baheen turned her down, saying he'd explain in his office later. I can't waste this precious moment on an ordinary girl. Like her, Simon Florentina. The single final exhaustion curse he cast on Hector was worth more than 10 of Hector's. That was the ultimate strike. Such a genius. He must major in curse arts no matter what. Baheen muttered to himself with a creepy smile. It seems he's taken an interest in this top-ranked student. Meanwhile, Simon was exhausted after his first day of classes at Kaizen. He never expected to face so much trouble right from day one. It wasn't fun at all, like his father had said. After a few more classes, Simon, looking like a zombie, complained to a classmate, "Why are these classes so tiring?" The classmate explained, "Of course, it's because you were chosen as a special admission student. The top-tier special admission at that." Simon still didn't get what that had to do with his classes being so hard, so the classmate had to explain further. Well, at Kaizen, it's not just the students who compete fiercely. The professors do as well. Professors who don't perform well get fired mid-semester, and their salaries might even change. Those with good results also have more influence at Kaizen. On top of that, all the professors are eager to have talented students. So just imagine having the #1 special admission student in class. Simon clutched his head in frustration. In short, the professors call on me in every class to test my abilities, right? Unfortunately, that was exactly the case. The classmate then added, "That's right. And the girl they call your rival Malin Wieland is the top student in Class A in the entire first year. So it would be easy to find out just how good you are by pitting you against her. But you couldn't beat her even once, so the professors are all confused. They thought you were an outstanding student. But it turns out you're just a beginner." Simon now understood the reason for everything. "I get it now. Oh, by the way, thanks for the explanation. But who are you?" For him to complain to someone without even knowing their name is just speechless. Hearing that the classmate got angry and shouted, "How could you be so cold?" We already introduced ourselves in Professor Bahin's class. "I'm Dick Haywood from Class A." Simon could only give an awkward smile and apologize. He was so exhausted today he didn't have the energy to remember anything else. Just the enchanting practice in Professor Bahin's class had completely drained him, tired as he was. But Simon found the classes very interesting. He was eager to learn dark magic and become a necromancer like his father. Although he found this new friend a bit strange, Dick was kind enough to warn him, "By the way, Simon, there's a serious problem. Hector has started forming his own faction. He impressed a lot of kids in Professor Bahin's class, so it's no surprise they're gathering around him. Plus, he's the eldest son of a powerful family, so he's pretty famous." Simon didn't pay it much mind. He had come here only to study. Seeing this, Dick shouted in agitation, "Come on, you need to get with the program. Politics are also incredibly important here at Kizen. Do you have any idea what will happen if the whole class falls under Hector's influence? Anyone who gets on his bad side will fail at this school. For starters, they won't be able to find partners for group assignments." Simon now understood the gravity of the situation, but he had a question first. "You seem pretty savvy about this political stuff, Dick. So why come to me and not Hector?" Dick explained shyly. "Well, that's because I'm just a commoner. I come from a family of merchants. And while everyone is treated fairly at Kizen, there are still some noble kids who like to show off their family status. Of course, Simon wasn't one of them. Although he was also a noble, he was from the middle of nowhere, so it didn't really count for much." Dick then revealed his main reason for approaching Simon. "I have a proposal. Join my side, Simon. You might lack skills, or at least that's what everyone is saying. But the fact remains that you're the #1 special admission student. The kids from the prep class might do better for now, but eventually we'll all be equals. And Neptus must have had a reason for letting you pass the special admission. In other words, you have a hidden talent that even you aren't aware of. This guy really is a good judge of character. He's definitely betting on the right horse. But recruiting the male lead is just wishful thinking." Simon just chuckled, stood up, and held out his hand. "I don't really get this whole faction thing, but how about we be friends instead?" Dick cringed when he heard that. Hearing that word here at Kizen feels really weird. This guy is so cheesy. How could he understand that for a main character, the power of friendship is on a completely different level? But Dick's intuition told him that being friends with Simon was the right choice, and so the two shook hands and became friends. After a short break, it was time for the next class to begin. Knowing it was summoning made Simon extremely excited. "Now I can summon creatures just like Dad." As Simon walked into the classroom, he was met with a barrage of sarcastic comments. "Oh, look, it's the #1 special admission student. The biggest joke in Kaizen's history. He's supposed to be better than Suna Saddle and Lauren. What a joke. The ones saying this were just trying to suck up to Hector." Meanwhile, Hector stared intently at Simon as if he were prey. He wouldn't pass up any opportunity to bring Simon down. Seeing the tension, Dick encouraged him. "Don't pay them any mind, Simon. They're just a bunch of attention seekers." But Simon couldn't be bothered with such nonsense. His mind was completely focused on the summoning class. Just then, a shabbily dressed man shuffled into the lecture hall. The students started whispering, assuming he had wandered in by mistake. To them, Kizen's professors were all polite and elegant, but reality was different. This man was Aaron Dia, the first-year summoning professor. After introducing himself, Aaron immediately started the lecture. Summoning is the root of all necromancy and of history itself. Scholars may not admit it. But it's hard to deny that our origins lie with coffin makers, grave robbers, and perverts. If you have ears, I'm sure you've heard many stories about summoning being outdated. No future hard to learn, too many limitations, and so on. Almost every prejudice you've ever heard is true. The entire class was stunned. What on earth was this man saying? He didn't sound like a summoning professor at all. The mood in the classroom soured, but Aaron ignored it and continued. "I'm sure all the other classes are trying to sell you on how great their major is and why you should choose it. Personally, I'm not a fan of that approach. I think I should tell you both the pros and cons so you can make an informed decision. So let's start with the disadvantages. It's very expensive, whatever you're estimating. It's several times more expensive than that. The material costs for summoning are higher than the tuition for all your other subjects combined, and materials are essential in summoning. We can't just kill people or animals for materials. So nowadays, we purchase and use skeletons or specially processed corpses to create the undead. Most of these off-the-shelf products can only be used once. Often we spend more on materials than we get from mission rewards, so if you plan to major in summoning, forget about making money. Second disadvantage, high dependency on creatures. It's obvious if you think about it, since summoning is all about fighting with your summons. When they're destroyed, a summoner's power drops by over 80%. This issue is directly related to the first disadvantage. For instance, summoners today often use modified semi-permanent undead instead of disposable ones. Imagine what happens when this kind of undead is destroyed. The summoner suffers both a strategic and financial blow from losing these creatures. Until they can recover from the damage, all they can do is watch their comrades strategize. Finally, the third and most important disadvantage, summoning is extremely weak against priests. To be precise, this makes it unsuitable for modern warfare. Modern warfare is phased warfare. Summoning is at its most effective during all-out full-scale wars. In such wars, summoners have an endless supply of materials for their undead. But since the armistice, modern warfare has become small-scale. These are typically localized conflicts. For battles where traceability is low, curses and sorcerers are more popular. And yes, summoning is very weak against priests. Just imagine one holy spell wiping out your entire army of the undead. Think of all the time and money it would take to rebuild it. There are many disadvantages, but the final decision is yours. Just then, a hand suddenly went up. Professor, I'm James Victoria. I'd also like to know about the advantages of summoning studies. Aaron's mood suddenly soured. I don't recall giving permission for questions. Aaron sighed in frustration and continued lecturing on the advantages Number's diverse tactical abilities. And support from summoned creatures. He gives such a detailed analysis of the disadvantages, but the advantages are so one-dimensional. Is this professor really teaching summoning? Aaron then said seriously, whether you want to take this course in the second semester is up to you, but remember one thing, don't even dream of stepping into this field. If you don't have enough courage, if you plan on crying, whining, or despairing, or if you want to ask my opinion on changing majors after your second year due to financial issues or whatnot, don't even think about pursuing this field with such a weak attitude, and if you think you want to major in summoning just because there's less competition, I will personally expel you, got it? And that was it before the class even began. Aaron's words seemed to extinguish all the students' interest in this subject. The teaching assistants standing nearby could only shake their heads wearily. They were all too used to this. After that, each student was given a box of materials for the class. What you're holding is the skeleton of an island ratman. Its skeletal structure is similar to a human's, but it's cheaper and simpler than a human skeleton. Most beginners in this subject start with the island ratman, and here are the bone structure and the corresponding numbers. After the brief introduction, the students began to touch the skeletons. Although they looked a bit creepy, they were thankfully completely clean. Aaron then guided the students step by step. Let's begin. Take out skull number 1. You'll see a part where you can place your hand. Underneath the skull and inside it is the magic circle adjustment device. Place your hand inside and create the magic circle. After the magic circle was cast before he could finish, the student screamed as the pile of skulls suddenly moved. Aaron laughed gleefully. Oh dear. I was about to tell you not to be startled because the undead would be activated. I guess I was a little late. While the other students were busy screaming, Simon easily controlled the skull with a single command to Deck, seeing that even he was amazed by this incredible maneuver. Simon just explained that he had encountered these things a lot, so he was experienced. Aaron slammed the table and said, "Get used to it. You're necromancers, aren't you?" After activating the magic circle, the process of creating the undead is almost complete. Of course, it can't move freely yet because it doesn't have a body. So now you have to build its body for it. Necromancers should be familiar with the skeletal structure of summoned creatures. The human body has a total of 206 bones, but the island ratman only has 53. So it's much easier. First find cervical bone number 2 and connect it to the skull. The skeleton tends to return to its original shape, so assembly will be very simple if you do it correctly. Aaron then read out the steps in order. Despite some difficulties, the students quickly got used to it and followed the instructions. The talented students even finished on their own, much earlier than the others. And in this subject, Simon completed the task without any difficulty. Not only that, he even had enough time to point out and correct Deck's mistakes after the practical part ended. As usual, it was time for a showdown between Simon and another student. His opponent this time was none other than Hector. Talk about a small world for rivals. Before they began, Aaron explained the rules for this match. We have 10 minutes left. You two will assemble the skeleton and use it to retrieve this necklace. Whoever gets the necklace before time is up wins. You cannot retrieve the necklace yourselves or use dark magic. Anything else is allowed. All right, get in position. Ready, begin. Simon and Hector immediately opened their material boxes and started assembling. Unlike last time, Simon was very confident he would win. But when he looked up at the board for the diagram, he discovered it had been taken down. It was clear they couldn't rely on any outside help. But Simon wasn't too worried. He just had to assemble the bones according to the numbers on them. But of course it wasn't that simple. There were no numbers on the bones at all. Aaron immediately explained, of course there aren't. The bones you just used were for the tutorial. The teaching assistant was in charge of numbering every single one. The skeletons sold on the market don't have numbers. Did I forget to mention that? A necromancer should be familiar with this kind of thing. After that, both of them began assembling the skeletons. Hector wasn't having any trouble at all. He slowly and precisely assembled each detail while Simon struggled, fumbling piece by piece, since this was his first time. So it was hard for him to remember the order of every detail. Aaron watched both students intently. The top-ranked special admission student had never assembled a skeleton before, and that big kid has already remembered the order and structure. He's relying on knowledge more than memory. What he learned in the prep class is helping him, but it's his intuition that's keeping him from making a critical error. So it's Hector. He's got a knack for this. As for that top-ranked kid, he's on the verge of collapsing. Did he never take a prep class? Hector seems to be the only talented one I see in this class. Before long, Hector's skeleton was already able to stand on its own. Now he just had to attach the two arms to finish. The other students gasped in amazement. Even though he was close to winning, Hector remained extremely careful with every action. I'm going to win. When I have the chance, I will crush you like this. You'll never get another chance to compete with me. I have to make him the laughingstock of the class. I'll trample on the confidence that comes with his #1 rank and watch him fall. After finishing the final steps, Hector's rat successfully grabbed the necklace with 5 minutes to spare. If Hector keeps the necklace in his skeleton's possession, he'll win. Simon's hands trembled as he tried to finish as quickly as possible. I was too confident. Hector took prep classes, but this is the first time I've ever assembled a skeleton. My chances of winning are slim. Instead of trying to recall what I learned in class, I should just forget it. That's right. I'll just go with my gut. I'll just assemble it my own way. Seeing that Simon wasn't following what they had just been taught, the other students began to whisper. What is he doing? He's already wrong from the first step. Has he given up? No talent or courage. How did someone like him get first place? Ignoring the murmurs, Simon focused on his assembly. The professor said to use the skeleton to get the necklace, but he never said it had to be a perfect one. I don't have time for this. Forget the complex structure. The simpler, the better. Use bone number 20 as the foreleg. Can't skip number 27. Because this is a crucial part. I'll skip 28, use 29, and then 31. Just like that, the skeleton was gradually completed with omitted parts. Seeing this, Aaron's eyes widened in shock. Impossible. How did that kid do it? This is the skeleton of a gray rat. The gray rat is the pre-evolutionary form of the island rat man. He used a different assembly method to create that structure. Of course, it's not a perfect match, but it's still an undead. It doesn't have to be identical. As long as it can move, it's fine. How can a student who never took a prep class do this? Did he figure it out on his own without relying on knowledge? After some trial and error, Simon finally completed the skeleton based on his instincts. The other students sensed his determination and began to cheer for him with all their might. The top students were even more astonished after seeing what Simon did, and the most bitter person was Hector. Something is strange. I'm the only one who made a perfect skeleton. I did it in a short amount of time without looking at the diagram. I, Hector Moe, should be the center of attention. But why has everyone stopped cheering for me? Just then, Simon gave an order to the skeleton he had just assembled. Charge and get the necklace! But because it was missing a few pieces, his skeleton shattered upon impact. Hector saw this and was thrilled, thinking he had won. He thought he had won back all the glory and admiration from his classmates, but a main character's plot armor is never that simple. In an instant, Simon controlled the arm flying through the air to snatch the necklace successfully. Hector couldn't accept the result, so he loudly questioned the professor. This is unfair, Professor Aaron. This is absurd. You said we had to use the skeleton to get the necklace. This is just a single bone, not a skeleton. At that moment, Simon spoke up. A skeleton, you say? I don't think so. Before Hector's astonished eyes, Simon just waved his hand and his skeleton reassembled itself good as new with the necklace held in its mouth. How about now? I guess it's fair now, right? Hector was boiling with rage, but couldn't do a damn thing. Aaron then intervened, saying, "That's enough, the winner is Simon Florentina." Hearing the result, Simon couldn't contain his joy. He held the skeleton up to the sky. Finally, he had won for once, and was no longer the laughingstock of the class. This was truly a sweet victory. In the professor's lounge, the first-year professors were sipping tea. While discussing this year's new students, everyone had already targeted a few genius students to pull to their side. After a while, the topic shifted to Simon, the #1 special admission student, as everyone was curious about how Simon performed. So they asked Baheen, who taught Class A today. Baheen replied, "He lost to another student in my class. I'm not sure if he has great talent or not. Not yet, anyway." Hearing this, the other professors asked again, "That's unexpected. But he's still #1. Is there really nothing special about him?" Baheen didn't mention that Simon's curse was abnormally strong, but only talked about him withstanding 9 exhaustion spells. It seems he wants to monopolize this newly discovered genius student for himself. The other professors weren't very impressed hearing this. 9 times, Stamina is indeed important, but that's not impressive enough for the #1 special admission student. Just then, Aaron walked in after finishing his lecture and was asked, "You taught Class A today too, didn't you, Aaron? The #1 special admission student. What do you think of him?" Aaron answered without hesitation, "A slow and mediocre kid. He has a certain uniqueness in making some creative, though flawed, specimens. I don't think this year's #1 student is really all that special. No way he was chosen by Lord Neptune." These words made the other professors discuss animatedly, but this couldn't possibly fool Baheen. Did Aaron just create a smokescreen about him? He's known to be a difficult person, and for him to do something like that, it can only be because he really likes that #1 student. A slow, mediocre kid with some uniqueness in making creative, though flawed, specimens. That's the highest praise Aaron could possibly give. A kid chosen by Neptus and noticed by the difficult Aaron. I'm getting more and more interested in this kid. Baheen then spoke up and asked, "That's right, Aaron. That declaration you made last year, are you still going to stick to it? That you don't intend to directly mentor any student under you anymore?" Baheen said with a sly smile, depending on Aaron's answer. So he could confirm his suspicions. Just as Aaron was about to answer, Neptus suddenly burst in, interrupting, "Hello, everyone." Acting so childish, who would think this is a 300-year-old necromancer? The professors immediately bowed upon seeing Neptus. Baheen, however, took an ice cream bar from his pocket and offered it to Neptus, though his mouth refused. Neptus's arm was very honest. He happily took the ice cream bar. Ice cream really is the ultimate weapon for winning over children. Neptus then ate his ice cream while asking the professors about the new students on their first day. The professors vied with each other to praise the students they favored. They couldn't wait for the time they could mentor each of them individually. Seeing this, Neptus was very pleased. "Good, very good report. Any problems you have anyway? Today is the first day, so go home early and get some rest." Just then, Aaron suddenly spoke up. "Neptus, I would like to discuss a private matter with you." The other professors were extremely curious about what could make Aaron so serious. As for Neptus, he accepted this sudden request without hesitation. Before leaving, Baheen gave a meaningful smile. He's always so direct. But Lord Neptus won't let you get what you want so easily, Aaron. Meanwhile, Simon and Dick were having a headache registering for a dorm room because they were late. There were no more 2-person rooms available. The worst-case scenario was that they would have to stay in separate rooms, but because they wanted to be together, they decided to check the other floors for any vacancies. Just then, 3 students, busy talking, bumped hard into the dorm manager. Not only did they not apologize, they also shouted, "Damn, what the hell? I told you to move. A mere staff member like you getting in our way. It's crushed at the corner because of you. What are you going to do about it, huh?" The manager didn't dare talk back and kept bowing to apologize, but that still didn't satisfy the insolent student. "Sorry, my ass, what are you doing just standing there? Move this right now!" Just then Simon stepped in. "Can't you see I'm talking to her?" Dick beside him also popped his head out and added, Yeah, we were here first. Don't just cut in like that. Besides, it's obvious you intentionally ran into her." Hearing this, the student angrily shouted, "What's your problem? You guys are commoners, aren't you? Who do you think you are?" Suddenly, one of them recognized Simon and stopped the others. Hey, wait, it's him, the #1 special admission student. The guy who read the declaration as the student representative in the auditorium. After realizing Simon's identity, the 3 of them immediately bailed. Be more careful next time. Let's go." Seeing this, Dick burst out laughing. They're really just a bunch of posers who are all talk. After thanking Simon for his help, the manager led him to find a dorm room. After rechecking the entire list, she told Simon, "Actually, there's one more room with 2 empty spots on the 4th floor. It's room 409, a 4-person room with a very nice view, and it's near the main staircase. Let's see which students are in the room." As soon as she saw the names, the manager immediately became flustered. Rooms 412 and 413 only have 1 spot left, but they're right next to room 409. Maybe we should check those rooms instead. But Simon wanted to room with Dick, so he asked about room 409 again. With no other choice, the manager had to explain her strange reaction. There's already a student in there. His name is Kazan Evan, and he was here last year too. Hearing this, Simon asked again last year, but this is the freshman dorm, the manager continued. Kazan failed to advance to the second year. I heard he has some issues, so he had to start over from the beginning. I'm just a caretaker for this dorm. So I don't know the details, but I heard that many of his roommates had to request a room change. They had bruises on their faces, and Kazan also gets into a lot of trouble. That's what I heard. Kazan usually expels problem students. It's strange that he's an exception after hearing this. Dick got a bit scared and advised Simon to find another room. But Simon decided to go in, say hello, and figure things out later. Ignoring Dick's advice, as soon as they opened the door, they both immediately felt a gloomy atmosphere. The room was pitch black with no light, and someone was covered with a blanket on the bed. "Hello, excuse me, sorry to bother you while you're sleeping. We'd like to stay in this room with you. Would that be all right?" As soon as the words were out, Kazan woke up immediately. He stared straight at Simon with bloodshot eyes. "New students, I see, so today is the day they announce the application results, huh? Time really flies. You don't have to be so polite. I'm a freshman too, after all." Seeing Kazan's scarred body, Dick was so scared he almost peed his pants. He hid behind Simon, trembling. Just as Simon was about to speak, Kazan cut him off. "I don't know how long you two will last in this academy, but remember these two things. First, don't stick your nose into my business. Second, don't make a ruckus before I go to sleep. Once I'm asleep, you can sing, dance, or do whatever you want." After hearing this, Simon asked, "So you're letting us stay?" Kazan didn't care and went back to sleep under his blanket. It doesn't really matter, does it? If it wasn't you two, someone else would come anyway, since this is the only vacant room. After getting approval, Simon and Dick went outside to inform the manager they would be staying in that room. Seeing that Simon seemed sure about this decision, the manager could only give a little advice. "All right then. If you have any problems, don't hesitate to let me know. I'll immediately report it to the administration for them to handle after filling out the nameplate for the room." Simon and Dick moved their things to the new room together. Dick was still uneasy and asked again, "Do you really think he won't wake up?" Simon replied, "I'm not sure, but he did say, we can do whatever we want once he's asleep." To test it out, Dick suddenly dropped the pile of books in his hand, making a loud noise, but Kazan didn't react at all. Only then did Dick feel somewhat relieved. So he was telling the truth. "I don't think he's a bad person. As long as we follow his rules, we'll be fine. Anyway, now that we have a room, let's drop our things off and go take a bath. I saw a bathroom on the second floor when we were coming up. Let's go check it out." Hearing about the bathroom, Simon became unusually excited. After trying it, he was extremely satisfied, but his actions, like a country bumpkin, attracted a lot of attention. According to Dick, Simon was already the center of gossip for placing first in the exam, and now he was also being called a country bumpkin and an old pretender. While talking, the two discussed how only 300 students would be able to continue to the second year. It all depended on the scores they achieved. Simon then heard about the concept of student protection for the first time. Seeing Simon's confusion, Dick explained it's for when they can't properly evaluate or grade a student yet. At such a time, the professors can't speak privately with these students, and they can't arbitrarily expel those students either. They're also not allowed to harm the students. If I remember correctly, there are many other forbidden things, but I can't recall them all. Hearing this, Simon panicked a little. So they're turning a blind eye to everything I did today. Luckily, thanks to student protection, Simon wasn't expelled for his crappy knowledge. Dick continued to explain that after that period, expelling students is common. Expulsion for not showing enough talent, for not showing any promise of a successful future. Violating rules, submitting low-quality assignments, you name it. But if you can hold on until the end of the first year, then you can get a job almost anywhere. If you can survive this intense competition and officially graduate, you'll become a pioneer. In an era where every continent is developing, I think you can become anything except a member of the nobility. In fact, a small kingdom might even offer you their princess in marriage if you graduate from Kaizen. The title of a Kaizen necromancer is that valuable. From that, you can see just how terrifyingly immense the power of a headmaster like Neptus is. When asked if his purpose for coming here was to become a noble, Dick answered with a firm no. Although it would bring certain benefits, that's not my goal. My goal is money, lots and lots of it. So from now on, I'm going to be very busy. Just then, a box suddenly flew out from the dark hole on the floor and into Simon's hand. Dick was scared stiff seeing it, but it was just a subspace. And this is a rat-shaped skeleton creation kit. I haven't taken many classes on this yet, so I brought one here to practice and get more familiar with it. I just don't want to forget everything I just experienced. Seeing this, a curious Dick moved closer. "Are you going to follow the correct sequence this time?" The answer was, of course, no. Simon would follow his own intuition and feelings. After a while of assembling, Simon completed the skeleton. Dick immediately recognized it was similar to the one Simon built in class, but it could be improved further. It took me longer, but it's still flawed and one leg is loose. But the creativity alone was enough to leave Dick dumbfounded. He was completely astonished. However, Simon still wasn't satisfied with it. He placed his hand on the skeleton and apologized to it, then forcefully smashed it into small pieces. Dick panicked. "What's going on? What's wrong?" "But you did such a good job." Simon closed his eyes, concentrating on recalling what Aaron taught in class. Skeletons created through summoning magic often retain some characteristics of their former bodies. The official term for this is regenerative force, also known as gravitational pull. Simon then focused on sensing every scattered fragment. Everything appeared in his mind. As long as Simon could remember their positions, reconstructing the original form with a single command wouldn't be hard. The skeleton instantly returned to its original form as if it had never been destroyed. Dick stared at it and exclaimed, "Wow, it's still amazing to see it regenerate like this. How were you able to do that, especially when you didn't even prepare for it?" But being too sleepy, Dick decided to go to bed first, while Simon continued to practice a bit longer. Their first class tomorrow was Dark Power Studies. Alone now, Simon decided to follow the book. "This time I'll follow the diagram. I have to connect it like this so the knee joint can rotate. These are the bones of a rat folk. If I arrange them differently, can it still move normally?" Simon muttered to himself like a madman as he experimented. The experience he gained, he carefully noted it down in his notebook. The assembly formulas are standards established by necromancers long ago, so to reach this stage. They must have experimented and failed countless times just like I am now. Every exercise has its own reason and meaning. Only after reassembling it myself did I realize how great the past necromancers were. Simon talked to the skeleton as he assembled it, and it seemed to have a consciousness responding whenever asked. After a while of experimenting, Simon decided to stop there. A question formed in his mind. The skeletons his father used to help people in the fief, and the skeletons Lauren used to control the gangs. What do I lack compared to them? Simon would find the answer soon enough. The next day, Class A's Dark Power Studies professor Eric Ora was lecturing. Dark energy is the foundation of a necromancer, so I cannot overstate the importance of dark power studies. So how does dark energy create magic? To answer this question, we must understand the flow of dark energy, ancient runes, and the mechanics of magic circles. The origin of runes comes from the eternal torch of the Black Temple. At first, no one wondered why the torch there never went out. Why? Because people at the time considered doubting God to be blasphemy. One day, they realized the ash from the torch looked like letters. They were amazed to discover that these ordinary-looking letters were what created a miracle that sustained the torch's light. That is the story behind the origin of runes. This was all new knowledge, so it was fascinating for an eager learner like Simon. But for Dick, the class was so boring he fell asleep. Professor Eric then wrote on the board to illustrate his lecture on the mages and necromancers, who discovered runes, made countless attempts to create the modern, understandable runic language we have today. This is the runic language after those improvements. And these two magic circles are examples of using the improved runic language. The magic circle you see here cannot be activated. The difference between it and the activatable magic circle on the right is how the runes are applied to the magic. Therefore, with adjustment tools and the knowledge you've learned, you can use dark energy more freely. That concludes today's lecture. I have an assignment for you due next class. Using the unactivatable magic circle we used as an example, present how you would modify it. Include the calculations and formulas you use to make it work. Oh, and 3 students I call on next class will have to present their work. See you next class. As soon as class ended, Dick complained, "Oh my God, Dark Power Studies is so hard. It feels just like studying algebra with my dad. Why can't I remember any of these formulas? I don't even get why we need to know those rules." Simon then spoke up. But it wasn't that bad. I didn't understand more than half of the lecture myself, but I liked how he described each principle. The two then bantered as they headed to their next class, Combat Magic, while the whole class wondered where the professor was. The ground suddenly began to shake. A huge cloud of dust appeared in the distance, heading towards them. By the time they realized it was a herd of hippos, they were already surrounded. As the class trembled in fear, a voice rang out, "Ha ha ha, welcome new students. Today Professor Ben will be teaching on Rock Mountain. Now everyone get on the hippos' backs," Dick whispered to Simon. Actually, it's not that surprising. The combat magic professor is known for being an eccentric. Here at Kizen, I heard she camps out at different spots on Steep Mountain. At that moment, an angry student yelled, "Hey, you told us to climb on that thing." You should roll out a carpet or something. Only then can we get on that monster and sit down. What a pampered young master who has never experienced life. Now is not the time to be making demands. The young man on the hippo heard this and without hesitation crushed the student on the ground. The student then screamed, "What do you think you're doing? A servant like you dares to get in our way. We are Kaizen students." How insolent, the young man sternly threatened. "Why are new students these days so foolish you should call me teaching assistant, not a servant?" Realizing he had done something foolish, the student repeatedly apologized to the teaching assistant in tears. After that, the class split into groups of 3 and climbed onto the hippos to go to Mount Rock. Along with Simon and Dick was a pretty and cute female student. It seems the main character's aura is starting to work again. They had just started, but the whole class was already screaming in agony after a long journey. The class finally reached the steep mountain, the location for this class. The physically weak students fainted on the spot after being tormented for a while. The remaining students were given a bottle of water to recover their strength just then. A flock of birds in the forest suddenly flew off in a panic, and a voice rang out, "Welcome students to the class. I am Hong Pentun Soka Malat. This semester I will be teaching you combat magic." This beautiful woman with a sturdy body is a legend among necromancers, a giant immortal monster who once burned down 4 Kunda Hydra fiefdoms. She is the one who, for 5 days and 5 nights, fought that giant immortal monster and single-handedly broke its 100 heads to claim a dramatic victory. This professor is good at everything except for her incurable lisp. Please stand up and form 4 vertical lines. The students were utterly confused, not understanding the request. Luckily, the teaching assistant was there to translate. So everyone knew to form 4 vertical lines. When everyone was settled into rows, Hong Pen immediately gave the order to depart and took off like a flash. The students didn't understand what was happening and could only blindly run after her. Students, a healthy body and mind is the foundation of combat magic, which stems from physical health, although Simon was physically superior to the other students. He was still amazed by this professor. "She's so amazing. How can she run like that? We all have 2 arms and 2 legs just like her." But the professor is on a completely different level. Hong Pen didn't even have a single drop of sweat. She was lecturing while running, training the body with dark energy is the foundation of this combat magic class. And we also learn about physical skills. Necromancers who primarily use combat magic are called combat-type necromancers if you reach a certain level like them. Dark energy will flow from your bodies as smoothly as silk. The dark energy will take the form of clothing, something we call a dark cloak. This is a signature skill of combat-type necromancers. There, the trees are dense here. Be careful. As the class entered the forest, things became more difficult. Students with poor stamina like Dick could only sigh, "Man, I'm so jealous of the kids who are talented in this subject." And that was indeed the case. Some students were jumping through the tree branches as if they were taking a walk. Meanwhile, the majority of students couldn't keep up, even using all their strength. Even though he was exhausted and out of breath, Dick still had the presence of mind to ask someone else, "Simon, are you okay?" When Simon said he was fine, Dick still managed to whisper as if out of breath, "How can that be? Are you really okay?" Simon smiled brightly. "My hometown has a lot of hills and mountains, and it's been a long time since I've had such a refreshing run." Since enrolling in school, this was the first time Simon had felt this happy. He felt as if he were back in his hometown. After a while of running, Hong Pen had the class stop by a cliff. "All right, everyone, you must use dark energy to jump across the valley in front of us." Seeing the chasm before them, the students asked in fear, "Well, we have to jump over this." Hong Pen then calmly instructed, "You can do it. It just takes a little trick. It's just like when you erupt dark energy in the palm of your hand. But the difference is that we will use the soles of our feet." Hong Pen then demonstrated by leaping through the air with ease. Everyone saw that, right? You don't need to fly through the air. When you jump, release the dark energy through the soles of your feet like a rocket launching. The feeling will be like stepping out of the shadows with just a single, simple jump. Pen reached the other side with ease, and now it was the students' turn to do what they just saw while everyone was still bewildered, the few talented students from earlier. Seized the chance to show off and leaped forward first. Although a few of them almost fell into the chasm, they all made it across safely. Very good. If you miss the timing, it can be dangerous like that. Next time you must release the energy earlier. Simon closed his eyes and muttered, stepping out of the shadows, stepping out of the shadows. It seemed he was trying to imagine what the professor said, but it looked like he was overthinking it. Dick thought that the more you think about it, the harder it will feel. So he boldly tried first. While in midair, he noticed Hader jumping higher, lost his concentration, and landed hard on his butt while Hader was the one who had jumped the highest so far. And received praise from his classmates. It seems his physical abilities weren't bad at all. Seeing that Simon still hadn't started, Dick spoke up to encourage him. "Simon, did you see me just now? Even I could do it." "You'll do great." Simon then did as the professor said and leaped super high and far, drawing everyone's attention. I did it. He succeeded on his very first try. This made Simon extremely happy he wouldn't be the laughingstock of the class anymore. Even Hong Pen was astonished by his move, but Hater, who had been surpassed, was extremely bitter. Gritting his teeth after waiting a bit for the students who fell into the valley, Hong Pen had the class move to the next location on the way. Dick showed Simon his notebook. "Oh, right, Simon, do you want to take a look at this on the way? It's the list of students to recruit for our class group. The class groups start next week, so we should prepare. I've listed everyone's names, their strengths, and their personalities. Look." This list was so complete and detailed that Simon was amazed while he had only just been catching up with his classes. Dick had already found the time to observe the other students in class. "Oh, so that's why he sought me out and not Hater." Because after observing Hater, he thought he couldn't get along with him anyway. "You need to get along to maintain a group." When asked for his thoughts, Dick replied, "Most of the students in our class are very proficient. They're all good. But that girl, the one who rode the hippo with us, I guess as soon as the student protection period ends, she will be expelled immediately. Only 2 people in the class fell into the valley, and she was one of them. Her personality is also quite timid, so she will probably get bullied." Just then, Hong Pen started running again. "Students, we've walked for a bit now. Let's continue running, shall we, seeing this?" The students groaned endlessly. Only Simon felt happy to be running. "This class is so dynamic. This is so much fun. This guy must be crazy." Suddenly, the ground shook violently. A herd of hippos was frantically charging toward the students. When the students looked for the professor's help, she was nowhere to be found. Even the teaching assistant had vanished without a trace at some point. In a moment of danger, Simon used an explosion of dark energy from his feet to leap high into the sky. Dick said there would be no danger during the student protection period. But could this be an accident? If we can't avoid this herd of hippos, someone might get hurt, but it seems Simon was worrying for nothing. The students of Kaizen wouldn't give up that easily. In various ways, the students safely got past the herd of hippos while hovering in the air. An acquaintance came to greet Simon, but he didn't notice it and focused on landing. "It seems I have no right to worry about others. I was worrying for nothing. I can't believe I have to compete with 1,000 top students like this." Seeing Simon sigh, Dick thought he was scared. "Are you sure you're okay? You must be shaking." "Don't worry, all the hippos have been tamed by Professor Hong Pen. She's a combat master, but she can also use the power of the Brit bloodline. When I was up there, I saw the hippos just surrounding the kids who fell down. They didn't charge at them. At that moment, the teaching assistant appeared. Come on, there's no time to sit and rest. Get up, the hippos will come back to attack again. Professor Hong Pen is waiting down there. Let's go now." Although some tried to escape, they were caught immediately. After running non-stop for a while, the whole class saw Professor Hong Pen waiting in a vast field of flowers. "There are no more obstacles. Come over here. You all did well. Now you can take a break." "Oh, but you can only eat after the lesson is over. But I guess you all must be exhausted." So I contacted Kaizen beforehand. Hong Pen then pointed to a food truck in the distance. All the students cheered excitedly upon seeing it. Everyone ate while praising their professor. But Simon wondered, "By the way, Dick, I think this is a bit different from the rumors I heard before coming here." "I heard Professor Hong Pen is one of the most typical Kaizen professors." Dick immediately refuted that after hearing it. "Professor Hong Pen, that nature-loving lady." "Where did you hear that? That's a false rumor." But Simon heard this from Lauren Neptus's daughter herself. After the class finished eating, Hong Pen announced they would clean up and leave in 10 minutes. At that moment, Simon suddenly had a bad feeling that this was just the beginning. Afterwards, the whole class was given a special bracelet that you channel dark energy into. Your whole body will become unusually heavy. You all know what the exhaustion curse is. Here is your next lesson. See that flag? You will have to climb to the top of the hill while the exhaustion curse is weighing you down. All right, get ready. I'll be watching to see who falls behind." In the students' eyes, the image of the beautiful, nature-loving professor completely vanished, replaced by the image of a terrifying demon. But not wanting to be punished by the scary professor, the class desperately rushed up the hill at the start signal. The small hill from before suddenly became towering. For these students, everyone had to crawl on all fours bit by bit. Even Simon was struggling immensely. It was hard to lift a single foot, and his head was spinning. But this has nothing to do with the preparatory class. This is purely a test of willpower and endurance. If I fall behind here, I won't be able to catch up with what's ahead. I will move forward no matter what. This is my chance to prove my abilities. Hector, who was not far ahead, was extremely surprised to see Simon approaching. "Damn, it's him again." I used my own skill to lessen the curse's effect and get ahead. So how is he keeping up without any tricks? This time I'll show you. This challenge then turned into a race for first place between Simon and Hector. They seemed evenly matched and determined to win at any cost. But what the hell? While the two of them were crawling on the ground like dogs, the announcement that Malin Villand won first place was made. Malin calmly walked forward as if nothing was wrong. Hong Pen then asked, "Congratulations on getting first place. You were walking. Normally, how did you do that?" Melon calmly replied, "I found a way to resist the exhaustion curse." Hearing that Simon and Hector were dumbfounded, "I didn't know you could break the curse yourself. These two are such idiots." Pen then rushed to check on an injured student behind them before she left. She didn't forget to encourage the two idiots on the ground. "You're almost there. Keep it up." Hector immediately broke the curse and took second place, leaving a bewildered Simon on the ground. Poor Simon hadn't learned how to break curses, so he could only keep crawling. Hector then went straight to Malin and questioned her. "Why did you break the exhaustion curse in a combat magic class?" "You think I was struggling because I don't know how to do it." Malin paid him no mind, but Hector continued, "What do you even know about the outside world? When you're locked up in an ivory tower all day like a princess." Hearing that, Malin glared. "Are you trying to pick a fight with me?" Hector pointed directly at Malin and said loudly, "I'm not picking a fight, I'm just telling the truth. The professors don't grade during the student protection period. What's important is to show them you're hardworking to gain their favor. But that stupid stunt you pulled has made you lose Professor Hong Pen's trust." Hearing this, Malin said sarcastically, "How you're all worked up? Are you that sad about getting second place? Why take it out on me hitting a nerve?" Hector got angry and shouted, "I'm just telling you not to mess up this class. As for me, I'm not interested in you at all." Simon finally crawled up and got third place. He dragged his messy self to a tree next to the two who were arguing. Both of them looked at Simon. With wary eyes, it seems they sensed the #1 special admission wasn't as simple as he looked. A long time later, Dick finally arrived. "I'm dying, Simon. Dying. How do you think we're getting back? If I have to climb on those hippos again, I'll bite my tongue and kill myself." After the students had completed the challenge, Hong Pen gathered everyone while two assistants brought out 2 magic circles. "Since you're tired, I contacted Kaizen again and got permission to use a temporary teleportation circle. It's for instant teleportation, so please line up." Then each student was teleported back to the school, but when it was Simon's turn, something strange happened. He fell on his butt in an unfamiliar place. "Where am I? I don't think this is Kaizen. It looks more like my home in Lachille." Just then, Hong Pen's voice came from behind. "Sorry for scaring you, Simon. Please have a seat. I will explain why you are here. The truth is, someone tampered with the teleportation circle. I had the assistants check it. The circle was mixed with a formula that clashes with some people's dark energy." "That's right, Simon. When it was activated, you were sent to a place that isn't Kaizen. Can you guess who did this?" "No matter how I think about it." Simon couldn't figure anything out. Seeing this, Hong Pen continued anyway. "Part of my responsibility is to protect my students from danger, so I had you sent home. Besides, I also wanted to speak with you privately during the protection period. Private contact with students is against the rules, but from what I've seen, the other professors have already broken the rules. Simon Florentia, how about you major in combat magic? If you want, I'm willing to take you as my disciple." Simon couldn't believe what he heard and asked again, "You mean you'll take me as your student?" Hong Pen was completely serious about this. "That's right, it means I would be responsible for you. A professor teaches each disciple with a complete sense of purpose and responsibility. A disciple's achievements are directly linked to the professor's, and we can only take on 3 students each term. I want to give that opportunity to you, Simon. What do you think?" Simon, still dazed, answered yes. He then quickly added, "I still don't understand. I didn't really show anything in class today," Simon said with his head down, lacking confidence. "I barely kept up with the other students. I even finished behind 2 others on the hill climb." The more he spoke, the more puzzled he looked, "And it's only the 2nd day of school. I'm not sure why you'd offer me such an important position." Hong Pen said lightly, "Simon, students care about rankings, but teachers only look at talent." She then asked, "The way you release dark energy when jumping over the valley, was that your first time trying it?" Simon quickly replied, "Yes." Hong Pen continued, "Even so, you jumped the highest in the class. That's neither talent nor coincidence." Then she stated firmly, "And when you climbed the hill, you only used your pure endurance and physical strength, unlike the other 2. Hong Pen continued casually to his dazed expression, "You may think you haven't shown anything, but you've already proven yourself to me." Next, she asked excitedly, "Do you need more praise?" Before Simon could say anything, Hong Pen added, "Your physical strength, mental fortitude, and outstanding talent for dark energy. If you study combat magic, you'll become the best, Simon. In a few years, you might even be able to defeat me." Realizing she hadn't said it right, she corrected herself. "Ah, no. I can make you stronger than anyone." Faced with Hong Pen's high praise, Simon could only stay silent, not knowing what to say. After a moment, he finally spoke up, "Professor, thank you for the offer." After speaking, he bowed apologetically, "But I must refuse." Hong Pen was surprised, but asked politely, "May I ask why?" Simon answered honestly, "I already have a field I want to explore right now." After hearing him, Hong Pen accepted without hesitation, all right. Thank you for being frank with me so we don't waste time. Unexpectedly, she then said, but that doesn't mean I'm giving up, making Simon blurt out in surprise, huh? Seeing he was still confused, Hong Peng kindly explained, you still have another year before you have to choose a major right. So I'll work harder to change your mind, Simon asked doubtfully. Huh, you still want to persist in convincing me? She replied, it's just my curious nature. Soon after, Hong Peng added how far Simon can develop. I want to know the answer, she said as she drew a magic circle. You don't have to be my disciple. You can come to me for help anytime. He replied emotionally, thank you, Professor. Less than a second later, she added, keep this a secret, okay? After all, we're still in the student protection period. Then Hong Peng spoke again. This time the teleportation will really take you back to Kaizen. Simone then happily replied, thank heavens. Next, she cheerfully waved goodbye. You can go now. See you next class. Simon obediently replied, yes, ma'am. Then he stepped straight into the teleportation circle Hong Peng had drawn for him without hesitation. Before teleporting, Simon politely said, see you again. Professor Hong Peng watched him leave with affectionate eyes as someone's voice called out to her. Professor Brad peeked in and asked Professor how did it go. What did Simon say? She calmly replied, he refused. Hearing that, he couldn't help but wonder. How dare he refuse? Professor, why don't we choose Hickory? He's more talented in this subject. Honestly, I don't understand why you prefer Simon. Hearing this, Hong Peng stated bluntly, that kid is a genius, making Brad exclaim, huh. She said confidently, I've seen many geniuses in Kaizen. Hong Peng paused for a second, then continued, but this is the first time I've seen a genius like him. The scene shifts to another place. As someone was about to open a locker, Dick's voice rang out, why are you back so late? Simon thought for a moment and replied, probably a problem with the teleportation? He replied while drying his hair, is that so? Then Dick excitedly asked, hey, you'll never guess what happened to me. You won't believe it. Hearing that, he asked curiously what happened. He began to explain, when I stepped into the teleportation circle, it felt like I was hit. It felt like my body was blocked by something. Then Dick continued, when I was in an unexpected place, I was like, where am I? And it turned out to be. Finally, he concluded in a low voice. Professor Baheen's office, Simon couldn't believe it and asked again Professor Baheen, who teaches theology. Dick confirmed, that's right. Seeing him silent, Simon asked again. Then what? Dick replied, he just made me clean his office. The more he spoke, the more excited he got. The Kaizen seniors told me the professor often recruits students through teleportation like this. Do you think I might have been chosen? Could I become his official disciple? Simon thought it was plausible and replied, it's possible. Dick immediately exclaimed emotionally, I can't believe I'm getting close to a big shot at Kaizen just like that. Then he jumped up and shouted, you know what an official disciple is, right? From now on, my school life will be a breeze. Thanks to the professor's authority, I can even avoid disciplinary actions and expulsion. Seeing this, Simon quickly tried to calm him down. Calm down. After pouring his heart out, Dick concluded, how can I be calm? Suddenly, Hector stepped forward and said contemptuously, that's the most ridiculous thing I've heard all year. A mere commoner like you becoming Professor Baheen's official disciple. Don't make me laugh, he thought to himself. Here we go again. Then he taunted, oh my, this young master seems upset. You were supposed to be number one, but the professor noticed me more, so you don't like it, do you? He warned angrily. Watch your mouth, you lowly merchant. Dick calmly retorted, as a lowly merchant, I know your type very well. He said casually, I heard you started something with Malene in combat magic class. Do you think you're the only one having a hard time? After that, Dick added, you and I are equals here. Don't act like you have special privileges just because you were taught by the Moji family. Finally, he concluded. Aren't you the one who knows nothing about the world, not Malene? Hearing this, Hector furiously yelled, you bastard, then launched a powerful spell at Dick, seeing his friend acting strangely. Simon frantically asked Dick what's wrong. Meanwhile, Hector powered up, cursing, you lowly scum. He angrily yelled, how dare you, and threw Dick backward. Hector's eyes filled with rage as he asked, is talking all you can do? Then Hector declared in a low voice, I'll kill you, Dick, on the other side. He was still struggling against his attacks. Contrary to Hector's expectation, Dick suddenly smiled. He made a challenging gesture and said with a trembling voice, I dare you. His friend saw things were getting out of hand and advised him to stop. Hector, you're going too far. You can't cast spells outside of class like this. But Hector didn't listen. Instead, he pushed them away and yelled, shut up. Suddenly, something rushed towards him, leaving Hector completely surprised. It was none other than Simon. He rushed forward and kicked him, sending Hector staggering back. Then he said bitterly, very well. He got into a stance and said, I was wondering when you'd interfere. Hector called out his name in a low voice. Simon Florentia, but Simon's face showed no fear. He summoned his magic, gritting his teeth as he spoke. "This time, let's have a proper fight." Suddenly, something flashed by, interrupting Hector's spell, making him and his friends stare wide-eyed at the object on the ground. Kazan walked forward before everyone's astonished eyes. Then he coldly commanded, "Take it back." He glanced around and warned, "Before I break both your necks." Hector, far from being scared, mocked Kazian Evan. "I didn't know you were still at this school." But his friends anxiously called out, "Hey, Hector, that's him, the one who got expelled for beating up another student." He continued, his face pale with fear. "You must have heard the rumor right." But before he could finish, Hector cut him off, saying, "Whatever, let's go." Then he aggressively said, "From now on, you two watch your backs. I won't let this go again." Faced with Hector's blatant challenge, the three of them remained silent. Then Simon said sincerely, "Kazan, thank you for helping us," but he just coldly turned away and replied, "You two shut up," seeing the students blocking his way. Kazan then yelled, "Get lost." They immediately hurried to say, "I'm sorry." After that, Simon said, "See, he's not a bad person," Dick added while rubbing his neck. "Yeah, for sure." Back in the dorm room, a satisfied sigh was suddenly heard. "It's finally the weekend." Dick curiously asked Simon, "What are you doing this weekend?" He casually replied, "This weekend I don't have any plans," hearing that he sighed in frustration. "How can you be so boring?" "What you do on the weekend is pretty important, you know." Simon immediately guessed. "Looks like you have your own plans." Dick arrogantly replied, "Of course, to me, the weekend schedule is more important than weekday classes." Then he asked why. Dick cheerfully replied, "I'm going to Rochester." He asked confusedly, "Rochester, is that town down there? What are you going to do there?" He calmly replied, "To make money, of course," leaving Simon bewildered. Make money, seeing his friend didn't understand. Dick explained, "You know how Kaizen gives students living expenses, right? The higher your grade, the less sufficient the money is. So I thought about getting a scholarship, but I probably don't have the scores for that." Finally, he concluded, "So I plan to use my unique ability as soon as possible." After that, Dick kindly advised, "So you should also find a way to make money. When the student protection period ends, the professors won't give out free materials in class anymore." Hearing that, Simon blurted out, "Really?" Then he added, "The living expenses from Kazan aren't enough to cover it. That's why the upperclassmen also have their own ways of making money. You're interested in summoning studies, right? Then it'll be even tougher than other majors," remembering Aaron had also warned him that major will eat up your money. Simon was just starting to understand. After he finished, Simon said, "I didn't know we had to take care of those minor things ourselves." "Living in Kaizen isn't easy, huh?" Dick replied. "Yeah, soon after he suggested, how about you wait until I've set up my business in Rochester? Back then, I could have at least arranged a job for you," but Simon flatly refused. "No need, I'll earn my own money to make it fair." Rick was moved after hearing that. "You're quite disciplined with money. Anyway, I'll head out after I finish tomorrow's schedule. See you?" Hearing this, he asked, "You're leaving now. It's late. What if the landlord catches you?" He replied wittily, "It's fine. Kaizen has the right to be strict. As long as I don't get caught, it's fine. See you later." Simon stammered in reply, "All right." After Dick left, he sat still, looking around thoughtfully. As Simon took out a pastry, he thought, "I should go thank Kazan when he gets back." But Kazan isn't here and Dick just left. He wondered what to do, and as he brought the pastry to his mouth, a strange creature with glowing eyes suddenly appeared behind him. As Simon was chewing, he sensed a presence. He stopped, and when he anxiously turned around to check, he only saw Neptis. Her glowing eyes were staring inside. Startled, he called out her name, Neptis. She cheerfully replied, "Hello." As Simon opened the window, he asked, "How did you get here?" Neptis casually replied, "I was just passing by." Hearing that, he panicked and retorted, "But this is the 4th floor." A moment later, Neptis exclaimed in delight, "So yummy." Simon told her to eat it all. She asked brightly, "Really, I'm so happy. I'm not allowed to eat sweets at home." A moment later, Neptis asked, "By the way, Simon, this is your first time at school, right? How is it?" He replied simply, "I'm very happy." Then he added, "The professor is super cool. Everyone's nice and the subjects are interesting. I think I fit in here better than I expected. Honestly, it was a struggle at first, but a friend from Kaizen helped me a lot." Hearing this, Neptis smiled and replied, "That's good. I thought you would have a hard time coming here without studying beforehand." A moment later, she said nostalgically, "Talking with you here at Kaizen is wonderful. It reminds me of when Richard was here." Hearing this, Simon quickly asked, "My father?" Neptis excitedly revealed, "Yep, your father Richard was also a student at Kaizen," causing him to exclaim in surprise, "Huh." Soon after, she sighed and said Richard was quite a handful. "You're sensible, but he was a troublemaker, a real walking disaster. But he was also very smart." Neptis added Richard often got into trouble for teasing the professors. He would try to skip class. I had to drag him back myself a few times. After hearing this, Simon held his head. "That's unbelievable. That's not the father I know." She cheerfully added completely different right. Then Simon asked, so did my father graduate? She answered frankly, no, he dropped out in his second year. Richard said the school was too small for him, so he left. There was no one like him at Kaizen before. He froze in surprise after hearing this. It was completely beyond his imagination. As Simon was lost in thought, Neptus's voice rang out again. He was a special case. I was young back then and couldn't handle him properly. After lying down on the bed, she exclaimed, oh right, I was young back then too. Less than a second later, Neptus cheered up and said, anyway, back in the day, Richard really turned this whole steep island upside down. If you look closely, you can still find traces of your father. Simon asked doubtfully, really? Instead of answering, she gently urged, just keep an eye out. I'm sure your school life will be interesting. Now I have to go. I have an evening schedule. Hearing this, he asked with regret, you have to leave now. As she opened the window, Neptus casually replied, I'll get scolded if I'm late. We'll see each other again soon. Before she left, Neptus turned back and said, thanks for the snacks. As she said bye, something fell from her pocket. Simon quickly caught it and called out loudly to her, you dropped this! But seeing the empty space before him, he could only stammer, here. Simon closed the door, guessing she must have left it for him on purpose. But when he opened it, he was completely stunned by what he saw. His eyes filled with confusion. Simon wondered, a treasure map. But why is there a skull drawn there? Shouldn't it be a treasure chest? Suddenly, Neptus's words echoed in his mind. Back in the day, Richard really turned this whole steep island upside down. If you look closely, you can still find traces of your father. And just like that, by some miraculous force, Simon was transported to that island. He said excitedly, Dick said it's fine as long as I don't get caught. In that case, Simon paused, then enthusiastically declared, I'll go explore tomorrow. But the next day, the scene was completely different from what he had imagined. Simon even wondered, should I go back while I still can? Then he immediately refuted it, no. I was given permission to stay overnight for this. It would be a waste to go back now. Simon then mumbled, careful, there are monsters. He then thought there are monsters in Leshiu, too. I wonder what the monsters on Steep Island are like. I'd better be careful. Simon looked up and noted, there's a ravine to the east and Kizen's outer wall is to the west. Okay, I'm heading the right way. Suddenly, he heard a very strange noise. This surprised Simon greatly. He looked ahead cautiously and wondered, is that a large beast? No, it sounds like. After Simon saw its bloodthirsty red eyes, he immediately knew a monster. Less than a second later, it appeared suddenly, forcing him to quickly retreat into a defensive stance. But before Simon could react, the monster lunged at him in that life-or-death moment. A thought flashed through Simon's mind. So fast, he wondered, what kind of monster is this? It's too fast, I can't see it in the dark. After getting a clear look at it, Simon confirmed it's a werewolf, judging by its size. It seems it's not fully grown yet. Before coming to Kaizen, I would have run away. His mind made up, Simon shouted without hesitation, restore. Several rat skeletons appeared. He then commanded attack. They immediately leaped high into the air, ready for action. The rat skeleton snatched a sword from nowhere with its bony hands. The one beside it did the exact same thing. Both rat skeletons looked ready to attack. Just then, Simon's voice was heard. But now I don't have to run anymore. The werewolf wasn't to be underestimated. It had been observing his actions. Sensing the right moment, it charged forward. Simultaneously, Simon shouted a warning. It's getting close. As he ordered advance, one rat skeleton led the charge, attacking the werewolf. Enraged at being hit, the werewolf immediately counterattacked with its claws. The skeleton was heavily damaged, which made Simon feel uneasy and gave him a splitting headache. Meanwhile, the other rat skeleton took the opportunity while the werewolf was distracted and charged in to attack. Seeing his chance, Simon, despite the immense pain, managed to shout, now! As he gave the command restore, the rat skeleton flew towards the werewolf to finish it. Its bony hands came straight down, pouring all its strength into the sword. A determined shriek from the rat skeleton rang out immediately after. At that moment, Simon, full of fighting spirit, commanded stab it. Caught by surprise, the werewolf couldn't defend and was forced back. Seeing this, he charged, thinking, this is my chance. Simon leaped high, preparing for a decisive blow. His face was filled with determination. Finally, the werewolf took the full brunt of his attack, its blood splattering everywhere after confirming it was truly defeated. Simon finally relaxed his guard. That was close. He thought, come to think of it, this was my first battle in Kaizen. Good thing I practiced assembling the Ratman skeleton. Simon then added, if I'd run into a monster in Leshiu, I'm sure I would have fled. But now I can defeat a werewolf after only 3 days at Kaizen. He wondered, how strong will I get if I can survive 3 years here? A moment later, Simon said, wait, this isn't the time to be thinking about that. I need to clean this up before other monsters are drawn by the smell of blood. But before he could do anything, one of the rat skeletons shattered, causing Simon to cry out no. He gently patted its head, praising it. It's too damaged. You did well, my friend. Then Simon turned to the other rat skeleton and warned it, if we have to fight again, we won't win. Be careful. After some time trekking through the wilderness, he could finally say, I'm here. After a few steps, Simon said in disappointment, but there's nothing here. Not even weeds are growing. A thought suddenly crossed his mind, and he hesitantly said, nothing is growing, which means, he said with certainty, taking out his tools, there must be something underneath. After he finished speaking, Simon felt incredibly lucky, thinking it was a good thing he borrowed this before leaving the dorm. Each shovelful dug deep into the ground and was then lifted out. Each scoop took a fair bit of effort. After digging for a while, Simon was surprised to exclaim, a stone platform, what is this? It's made of jet. Is it some kind of device? Then he discovered a small round object buried in the ground that felt like a switch. Simon stared at his hand and thought to himself, my fist fits perfectly in it. He wondered to himself if this is some kind of device. Then it should react to dark energy, right? Seeing the continuous flashes of light, Simon exclaimed in surprise, it's reacting. The ground moved rhythmically, and he was completely amazed as he witnessed this. Soon after the ground settled, Simon muttered in disbelief. His eyes lit up, and a happy smile appeared on his handsome face. The skeleton rat excitedly raised its lamp as he said, all right, let's go down and check it out. Below was an incredibly dark space with almost no sign of human presence. Tree roots were even wrapped around the furniture, highlighting the desolation of this place. The skull was also a prominent feature of this place. The deadly aura surrounding it was hard to ignore. As Simon stepped inside, he wondered, what is this place? Ancient ruins or something, huh? He reached out to touch something and remarked, this looks familiar. After thinking for a moment, Simon confidently confirmed, it's ancient ruins. Then he guessed, so this place must be ancient ruins, right? With ancient ruins everywhere like this has to be it. Simon paused, then added a kind of giant magical tool. Seeing the skeleton rat signaling him, he turned and asked, what is it? Did you find something? Simon looked where the skeleton rat was pointing, then walked over and exclaimed, a skull. He then reached out to touch it. A strange sensation traveled to Simon's fingertips. He thought, even with my limited knowledge of the undead, I'm sure. Simon wondered as he picked up the skull. This skull is incredibly precious and very dangerous. Why is such a foul thing here? Less than a second later, a bone suddenly fell, startling both him and the skeleton rat. After calming down, Simon cautiously approached and sighed. That scared me. What are all these? He randomly picked up a bone and exclaimed, this is the number 2 bone. A sound suddenly echoed as he fitted the bone into its correct place. Then Simon excitedly thought, I don't know how this undead will react when it awakens. It might try to harm me, but I still want to try assembling it. He calmly placed the skull on the table and said seriously, this is the right time to take a risk. With that, Simon raised his hand, summoning a small amount of magic into his palm. Then he slammed it down and declared with vigor, this is it. A gloomy aura immediately appeared after Simon's strike, swirling densely in the air. The skull was also enveloped by the dark aura that had just appeared. Seeing this, not only was Simon not scared, but he cheered happily. It's working. He cautiously told himself, I've awakened a skeleton rat. Now all that's left is to... Simon glanced down at the pile of bones and said, all right, time to assemble it. Some more time passed. As he worked, he muttered, it's a good thing I focused on my summoning studies. Otherwise, I might not have been able to assemble this thing all night. Simon hesitated. I'm not 100% sure, but its bone structure is human-like, so I have an idea of how to assemble it. He could only exclaim, but it's so big. Simon couldn't help but remark, how are you already standing up with just 2 legs? If I knew you were going to do that, I would have attached the arms first. He then added, at least it looks pretty cool when all the parts are assembled. It must be around 2 meters tall. Just as Simon wondered what he should do next, a small stream of light suddenly appeared and entered the skeleton he had just assembled. Startled, Simon blurted out, what meanwhile the sound of continuous laughter echoed, sending a chill down his spine. The sound grew louder and the floor suddenly rose up, making Simon exclaim in surprise, what's happening? The persistent laughter continued and ancient runes appeared all around. The skeleton was surrounded by a brilliant blue light. As countless ancient runes swirled, it finally spoke. It paused for a moment, then exclaimed with vigor, at last I have returned. A source of light suddenly shot towards the other skeleton. With unbelievable speed, it summoned its power and angrily shouted, who dares disturb my slumber? It then interrogated, you, human. You are the one who awakened me. Is that not so? State your name, he stammered, Simon Florentia. Hearing this, Fia asked suspiciously, what you are from the Florentia family. Then it continued, I see. You are a descendant of Richard. Simon hesitated. Descendant sounds a bit distant, but that's correct. Then he explained, Richard is my father's name. I am the son of Richard Florentia. After hearing this, Fia seemed to understand. I see, now I understand. As it began to walk, it explained your dark energy feels quite familiar. Only Richard could have awakened me. Though he didn't fully understand, Simon still replied, all right. This time it was his turn to ask. Excuse me, but who are you? Fia casually replied, me. As it slung a weapon over its shoulder, it introduced itself. I am Fia, master of the battalion. I once ruled the entire continent alongside your father, Richard. Simon, confused, asked. You are my father's undead. But Fia did not answer, instead saying, now let me ask you who led you to this place. He answered frankly, Nephthys Akbort was the one who told me about this place. Hearing him say that, Fia understood at once, so it was her that makes sense. The silence between them did not last long before it spoke again. All right. Fia said bluntly, form a pact with me, Simon Florentia, and lead the battalion. Simon asked blankly, a pact? It then explained. The battalion will act on your will and crush everything in your path. All living things in the world will kneel at your feet and beg for mercy. It paused for a beat after speaking. Then it added in a deep voice, however. It continued grimly, you will have to walk a bloody path of destruction. It will become a part of your destiny. As it spoke, it spread its arms wide and asked, now then, son of Richard, it raised its voice. Are you ready to lead the battalion? Simon did not rush to answer, speaking calmly. I have a question first, he said nonchalantly. I don't know what purpose you serve or what kind of undead you are. And this is the first time I've ever heard of the battalion. Finally, Simon asked curiously, is this battalion you speak of that powerful? Fia replied in an admiring tone. You dare ask about the battalion's power without doubt or fear. An excellent question, human. And so it said very well. I shall answer your question. My battalion is powerful enough to destroy Kaizen right here. Right now. However, as it spoke, Fia's voice suddenly deepened. Your father, the former commander, disbanded the battalion and I was sealed here. And you, the master of the battalion, have awakened me. It said with vigor, my battalion can feel the breath of life once more. Then Fia spoke with passion. If you reassemble the forces of the disbanded battalion and restore its past glory, then no one on this continent will be able to stop you. Simon did not rush to agree, contemplating calmly for a long time. After careful consideration, he finally said, all right, I agree to the pact. Fia then lifted Simon up. It said in an approving tone, a wise choice, human. It lifted Simon onto a high step level with itself and then spoke. Now then. Fia displayed its power, then eagerly instructed, place your hand on my core. Fearing he might have regrets, it warned, after this pact is sealed, your life will change completely. If you are afraid, there is still time to back out. But Simon simply replied calmly, there is nothing to fear. If you and your comrades were truly my father's army. He paused, then spoke casually. Then there is nothing wrong with recruiting you. Hearing this, Fia exclaimed in surprise, recruiting, huh? He thought to himself that at first the kid seemed calm and polite, but deep down he had the qualities of a ruler. Thinking that, Fia exclaimed, I like your spirit. Richard raised his son well. Less than a second later, he declared with vigor, then I will start the contract before the darkness envelops you. Fia even kindly advised, don't you die on me, Chew. Hearing his ominous warning, Simon couldn't help but blurt out, what? He then stammered, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? Don't! As Simon uttered the word, his entire body was immediately surrounded by a dark aura. Seeing him suddenly collapse, he gasped in surprise. The skeleton rat was also very surprised. Seeing this, he turned to the skeleton rat and asked, do you think your master is dead? It immediately shook its head. After some time, Simon's eyes shot open as he woke up frantically saying, what? Just as he sat up, Fia's voice rang out. You're awake. Simon frantically asked, what happened? What about the contract? He calmly replied, the contract was successfully signed. Then Fia kindly added, feel the changes inside your body. Simon then calmed himself to feel it, then said in a low voice, my core. Fia asked, how does it feel? Your core is bigger and more stable now, isn't it? He immediately confirmed that's right. Simon then added, before using dark energy for even a little while would tire my body out. But now my body feels very comfortable, like I'm soaking in water. Hearing this, he made a thoughtful sound, and then Fia spoke again. Then congratulations, kid. You've successfully become one of the 7 battalion commanders. He nodded and said thank you. But as soon as he finished the word, Simon passed out again. Seeing this, he quickly said, don't push yourself. Your body has just undergone a major change. Holding his head, he thought, my head hurts so much. I guess I'll have to rest here for the night. At the same time, Fia's voice was heard. It will be uncomfortable for a while. A moment later, Simon curiously said, "I have a question." He replied casually, "Go ahead and ask." A second later, he innocently asked, "What's a battalion?" This made Fia freeze for a moment. After snapping out of it, he furiously shouted, "You signed a contract with me without knowing what a battalion is." Simon covered his ears and tried to explain, "I already told you I didn't know." Meanwhile, Fia sighed helplessly. "This is unbelievable. It's going to take me a while to figure you out." After that, he sat down and began to speak slowly. "All right, then. I will explain. Before I begin, how much do you know about the undead?" Simon thought for a moment, then answered, "About as much as a first-year student. I haven't even taken the preparatory course at Kizen." Fia was extremely surprised by his answer and exclaimed, "A new student dares to come all the way out here. Truly, Richard's son. All right, then? Then I'll explain it in a way that suits your level." He then began, "First, the undead in this world can be divided into 3 types. Summoned undead, natural undead, and battalions." Fia paused, then continued. "First, all undead controlled by necromancers like you are called summoned undead. They are created by magic and move according to the summoner's command." He added in a low voice, "They disappear after a certain time or when the magic runs out." As he finished, Fia added grimly, "Natural undead are created without necromancers or magic. When people think of the undead, this is the type they imagine." Then he added, "Because of their blind hatred for the living and their aggressive nature, natural undead are classified by humans as monsters." Monsters. After hearing that, Simon made a sound of realization. Finally, Fia got to the main point, and last but not least, battalions. "You could say we are between summoned and natural undead," he declared proudly. "Battalions are like natural undead in that we can exist on our own, using our own core. But we are also like summoned undead in that we obey commands from necromancers or higher-ranking undead." Simon replied, "I understand." But Fia continued, "In this world there are only 7 battalion legions. In other words, only 7 necromancers can control the battalions." He then paused and pointed at Simon and said, "And you are one of those 7. Fia continued wagging his finger basically. "A necromancer leads a platoon of undead. As their summoning skill increases, so does the number of their troops. I've seen a battalion fleet before, but there weren't that many of them." Hearing that, he asked doubtfully, "Really?" Simon thought, "Then what about the necromancers who graduate from Kaizen? Surely there must be many high-level necromancers from Kizen." "Yes," he confirmed. Fia said casually, "Those high-level necromancers can command a legion of undead, but it's usually not very efficient." He was very surprised and asked, "Really? Why is that?" He continued to explain, "I just told you that all undead controlled by necromancers are the summoned type, right?" Simon obediently replied, "Right." Fia said, "Summoned undead move using dark energy from the summoner." He then further explained that both summoning and controlling the undead consumes a large amount of dark energy and mental strength. So obviously, as the number increases, so does the burden on the summoner. Hearing this, Simon couldn't help but say, "Now that you mention it, one of my skeleton rats was destroyed on the way here. So the reason I had a headache then?" Seeing that he had a vague idea but wasn't sure, Fia said firmly, "Yes, that's the reason." He pointed to his head and spoke. "The summoned undead and the necromancer are connected. Major damage puts a strain on the summoner." Then Fia added proudly, "But a battalion's undead. Move using their own magic. Furthermore, battalions have no limits." Then he asked seriously, "That allows you to command a number of undead?" "Without limit. Thousands or even millions of undead are no problem." "Have you heard stories of a necromancer commanding a giant army of undead?" Simon answered honestly, "I have." Hearing that, Fia immediately guessed, "Then that must have been a story about a battalion commander." Simon then slowly asked, "So you mean I've just become one of the 7 necromancers who can summon an unlimited number of undead?" He replied curtly, "Yes." Then Fia added, "You don't have any more questions, do you?" He clenched his fist and replied, Thank you, Fia." Hearing that, he began to speak thoughtfully now that the contract has been successfully signed. "Whether we like it or not. We're in the same boat now. Shouldn't we discuss our future plans?" Simon casually replied, "All right, Fia." Soon after, Fia said, "Both you and I are in special circumstances. You said you're a new student at Kizen, right?" He confirmed yes, but then he asked, "Are you planning to drop out of Kizen?" Simon answered firmly, "Not right now. That would go against my father's wishes, and I still have a lot to learn." Hearing that, Fia praised good. "I agree that Kizen has its uses." However, he asked worriedly, "But what about your special circumstances?" Fia lowered his head and answered, "To be more precise, the circumstances that make me and my battalion special." Simon naively asked, "Is it because the battalion was disbanded?" He hesitantly continued, "That's part of it, but there's something more important." Hearing that, he asked curiously, "What is it?" Fia hesitated before saying, currently, my battalion is the common enemy of all necromancers. Simply put, Simon was shocked speechless when he heard him say we are a wanted group. Then Fia continued. We are wanted for a crime committed by the former commander, your father. Hearing this, he asked, a crime? What crime? Simon recalled Richard's words. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you, but I can't enter the Dresden Kingdom. It's a long story. Then he hesitated. He hesitantly spoke up. When my father dropped me off, he said he couldn't enter the Dresden Kingdom. Could it be because... He replied in a low voice. Yes, I think that's the reason. Simon immediately asked, so what was the crime? Then Fia began to explain, it was an unforgivable crime in the magical world and our battalion was an accomplice. Simon heard the words that crime was betrayal and his emotions froze at that very moment. However, his voice remained steady. Richard fell in love with a priest. At that time, the 100-year war between necromancers and priests was still ongoing. Fia calmly recounted, even though it was the most sensitive of times. Richard still ordered the battalion to protect his lover. That order was to attack the necromancers who came to kill her, he said with a nostalgic voice. Many necromancers were killed by our battalion, so it was only natural for them to order our extermination. Fia paused for a moment, then continued. And that order is still in effect even though our battalion has been disbanded. This is the reason why. We cannot operate out in the open. Simon listened for a moment, then asked, so Fia, do you hate my father? He jumped up to object. Hate! Such a weak emotion doesn't exist in the battalion. After speaking, Fia irritably added, of course, if his son pulls that same damn stunt again, then I will be furious. This left the boy with no choice but to laugh awkwardly to smooth things over, but then the old man waved his hand and continued. You do not need to feel guilty about that. That was the will of Richard, your father, and also my former commander, Fia said while taking the chance to get a jab in. That's right. That was the will of that weird bastard. Hearing that, the boy blurted out in surprise, a bastard. The more he spoke, the more fired up he got. Why should I hide it? He was the biggest scumbag, the lowest of the low. He made girls cry every day. Making the professors so mad they'd storm out of class was probably the tamest thing he did. Finally, Fia concluded, I get it, that bastard has a son now. Then he suddenly realized, wait a minute, his son. Why have I never thought about that? A bewildered Simon let out a huh. Meanwhile, Fia stammered out a question. You said you are Richard's son, right? So that means... Seeing his confusion, Simon kindly answered, yes, you are right. My mother's name is Anna Florentia. Hearing his answer, Fia's heart felt like it skipped a beat. Right after that, he continuously backed away while yelling, what did you say? Then Fia could not hold back and screamed, how disgusting. You are the son of my friend and my enemy. While he wondered to himself, how could this have happened? Simon covered his mouth to stifle a laugh. Less than a second later, he imitated Anna's voice, saying, my love dinner is ready, causing Fia endless torment. So when Simon continued, or would you like to take a bath first, he did not hesitate to step in and stop him. Stop it! Nightmare! I'm going to have nightmares. Get out of my head, you demon. After that, the two were polar opposites. One sat there laughing cheerfully while the other was rolling around frantically wondering why. And it did not stop there. Simon even beamed and said, I am really looking forward to working with you. This made him furious, and he warned, do not you laugh like that woman, you damn brat. Only after a while did Fia calm down and say, all right. Either way, you do not have the right to choose who gives birth to you. Let us get back to the main point. The boy obediently replied yes. He sternly instructed from now on, absorb the knowledge Kizen teaches you and get stronger. Do not let anyone know you possess that legion. Simon heard this and was very curious. Why? Fia answered calmly, because you are Richard's son. The adults will be very shocked about you and Richard. And most importantly, he drew out his voice, then shared his opinion. What do you think other necromancers will think when they hear a Kaizen first year possesses a legion? These words made Simon nod in agreement. Then he said, you mean necromancers stronger than me will hunt me down? Fia confirmed yes. At that point, what will you need? Simon replied decisively to get stronger. Hearing that he was satisfied and praised exactly Kid. Finally, Fia concluded, and so, learn everything you need at Kizen. The legion will restore its former glory on its own. The boy listened, then casually said his mind was blown. Next, he turned and said, now we need a way to control the Legion based on the specific situation. I will show you something. Come here, kid. Simon replied curiously, yes, what is it? Fia just beckoned a few times and the rat skeleton automatically came closer to him. This made the boy sitting nearby. So surprised, he let out a few doubtful sounds. Then Simon asked, you can control my skeleton. He calmly confirmed, of course. We are now using the same dark energy, so all the undead summoned through your dark energy belong to the Legion. After speaking, Fia explained further, you are the supreme commander of the Legion, and I hold the second-in-command authority. Even so, He paused for a moment, then added, "These undead have not gone through Legion unification." Simon found that strange and asked Legion unification. Fia knew he would look confused. So he had already placed his hand on the rat skeleton's head and said, "Yes, watch this." A surge of dark energy immediately erupted the moment Fia summoned it. The sight was unexpected but magnificent. Simon was still mesmerized as he watched this display, as if he could not believe his eyes. On the other side, dark energy swirled out, swallowing the rat skeleton whole. Fia looked at it, then slowly began to introduce this is. He paused for a moment, waiting for the rat skeleton to land before continuing an undead that has been unified. Hearing this, Simon asked doubtfully, "Really? It does not look any different." But after seeing the rat skeleton's brightly glowing eyes, he let out a surprised sound. Just then, Fia's voice rang out. Simply put, it helps the summoned undead become an independent entity. Simon then asked, "So does this rat now have a mana core?" He answered briefly, "Yes." Hearing that, the boy frankly stated his opinion. "I thought there was no difference, but I guess I was wrong. I would be caught immediately if I brought it to school." But Fia quickly shook his head, denying that idea. "No, you do not need to unify all the undead. Unless an undead can exist for a long time like me, summoned undead are more effective in real combat. That is basic knowledge, you know." After speaking, he added, "Put that aside for now, and just use summoned undead at school like usual." Then Fia declared, "If the undead run out of time or get killed, bring them to me. I will unify them into the Legion and deploy them from here. If their injuries are not too serious, they can recover on their own here." After listening, the boy nodded and said that will be effective. Next, he fist-bumped Simon while praising him. "Good. Now, kid, you will gradually get stronger. If you can summon exceptional undead individuals, the Legion's power." Simon glanced over at the rat skeleton and hesitantly said, "By the way." He honestly remarked, "It seems to act more like a real animal." Fia replied, "It shares characteristics with natural undead." Then he added, "But you have control over it, so it will come to you immediately if it is summoned. Kid, how long have you been at Kaizen?" Simon answered honestly, "Only 3 days." After hearing that, Fia said, "I see. It will be soon in a few days," Simon heard him say. "The first-year students at Kaizen will be given missions. You will be able to teleport to Slope Island or the entire continent." He was incredibly excited. Next, Fia instructed, "At that time, I will go with you. That way you will have a chance to control the Legion and gather the forces scattered across the continent." Then the boy asked casually, "You seem to know a lot about Kaizen, huh?" Fia replied enthusiastically, "Of course. I watched your father's entire life at Kaizen. I also watched how your father controlled the Legion." He finished by asking, "Do you want to hear about it?" Simon immediately replied excitedly, "Yes, very much." Less than a second later, he could not help but ask, "So why do the undead turn against their summoner?" Fia answered calmly, "Because the summoner lacks understanding of the undead. You cannot judge the undead using common sense." After speaking, he stated firmly, "The thing that drives the undead to act is Hell's faith." Hearing this, Simon asked blankly, "Hell's faith?" Fia had to explain in human terms it is probably equivalent to an obsession. Fearing he still did not get it, Fia explained further. "For example, there is someone you utterly hate with great resentment. Several times a day you will constantly wish you could kill him. Then the undead will remember your obsession." Hearing this, Simon started to realize, "Wait a minute, so that means..." He immediately confirmed, "That is right. The undead will go and kill that person, even when you are not around." Next, Fia added, "Even when you are no longer thinking about that person, or have forgotten them completely. The undead will still remember that hateful obsession, and chase that person for the rest of its existence." Hearing this, the boy exclaimed, "No way." Then Fia kindly said, "I will constantly warn you, so you do not need to worry. That will also help you understand many things from their perspective." "Zombies again," he hesitantly replied. "Thanks, Fia. That really helps." Before long, he spoke again while we're on the subject. "I'll teach you how to command the undead to attack. First, the most important thing is your intent, no matter the target." "My intent?" Simon asked hesitantly. But Fia quickly said, "For example, pretend the wall behind you is the enemy." He then encouraged Go on hate that wall more than anything. "Okay," Simon agreed. Fia then began instructing, "You need to channel your desire to avenge your parents onto that wall. It's also the one who killed the person you love." As he spoke, his voice grew more powerful. "Come on, destroy it, tear it in half. It is your enemy and a demon." Then Fia raised his voice to command. "Bathe in its blood." The bone rat charged straight at the wall. At the same time, his voice rang out, "Kill it, kill it," Fia madly commanded while controlling it. "Die. It doesn't deserve to live." The bone rat relentlessly attacked the wall. He kept on. "It must not exist. Tear it into a million pieces until it screams in pain." Seeing this, Simon hesitantly spoke up, "Fia, this is..." But he calmly replied, "I use some extreme words to help you understand better, but the most important part is still your intent." After speaking, Fia added, A top necromancer can convey the correct intent even with the smallest commands. And above all, think of anger, hatred, and killing intent, he concluded coldly. Those negative emotions are much more powerful. Fia then told Simon now try to stop it. You're the commander after all. Okay, he replied curtly. He repeatedly shouted commands, stop, you can stop now, I said stop. Simon's voice kept ringing out, stop right now. But the bone rat didn't stop. It kept smashing into the wall, not even after its arm broke off. All the while, he was still ordering it to stop. Seeing this, Simon asked in disbelief, can't you hear what I'm saying? His anger flared as the bone rat continued to disobey. Simon was so enraged he gritted his teeth, his patience wearing thin. Then Simon roared with all his might, stop shaking the entire space. It had just felt that deathly aura. It stopped and turned to look at Simon, who growled, if you disobey my command again, I won't let you off the hook. Standing nearby, Fia thought to himself, look at that. He just used an absolute command. Then he wondered to himself, you're not just some country bumpkin, are you? What kind of monster did you create, Richard? Then Simon spoke sorrowfully as if blaming himself. I'm terrible, aren't I? He looked at the shattered bone rat and continued, I can't even control my own undead. In contrast to his dejection, Fia said, no, you did very well. He then added, but on the battlefield there's no room for failure, so practice moving the undead with a single command. Got it, Simon replied immediately. Fia saw him stagger and caught him saying, it's because you're tense and besides what you just witnessed. It was quite a shock. Simon didn't deny it, just smiling as he replied, let me rest a bit, then I'll return to Kizen. I'm only allowed out for one day. Is that so? He asked casually. Then Fia threw something to him saying, here, take this kid. Simon caught it reflexively and asked, what is this? He explained with a sigh, you need a way to contact me when you're back in Kaizen, right? This is my proxy. Fia then added, with this you can talk to me whenever you want. Don't hesitate to call me if you're in trouble. Simon heard him and replied obediently, yes, thank you, Fia. Then Simon said, I'll visit again next weekend. He replied casually, all right. I look forward to seeing your progress in a week. Then he politely said his goodbyes. Sometime later, Fia's excited voice suddenly rang out, it's been a long time since I've been to Kizen. Then he asked, you said you're still in the student protection period, right? I'm really looking forward to seeing how things play out. Really hearing that Simon couldn't help but be curious. Like what? Hearing the question, Fia frowned, then hesitated like. He then said in a deep voice the horrible test that's in front of you. The scene shifts to the night before. As Kaizen slept, a whispering conversation began. All right then, Dick said, pushing up his glasses with a serious look. The meeting will now begin. Simon, on the other end, replied just as seriously, I'm listening, Dick. Dick began his analysis first this coming Monday. Both our morning and afternoon classes are dark. Basic magic. There's something infamous in that class. Dick paused for a moment, then stated firmly the group project. Fearing Simon wouldn't believe him, he added in a low voice, once a group is formed, you're stuck with it for the whole semester. So this is a matter of our survival at Kizen. Dick argued first and most importantly, a group must have 4 people and it's best if each person excels in a different subject. He continued, I'm average in all subjects except for curses, where I'm slightly better. And you're best at summoning, aren't you? Simon quickly replied, that's right. After hearing his reply, Dick continued confidently, good. Even with just the 2 of us, we have a decent balance. Let me explain in more detail. We take 9 subjects in total, right? He began to list the subjects. Theology, curses, summoning, spiritualism, blood magic, toxicology, combat magic, and then there's defense against holy arts and dark. Basic magic, Dick said while pointing at the book. Among these, theology, curses, and summoning account for a large portion of the final exam grade. Therefore, these 3 are known as the 3 necromantic studies. Hearing that, Simon said casually, in that case, we've got 2 of the 3 covered between us. You know curses, and I know summoning. He agreed, replying, so we need to recruit someone who's good at theology. What about the remaining members? Dick then continued his analysis. Spiritualism, blood magic, toxicology, combat, magic defense against holy arts, and basic dark magic are all minor subjects. You can't major in them, so we'll just ignore them. Most of the kids who like combat magic usually focus only on that one subject. Their grades in other subjects are usually terrible, so we have to rule them out. Simon then heard him say, those who plan to major in theology are usually good at defense against holy arts. It seems they understand the enemy well. Likewise, blood magic is similar to toxicology, so many students study both. Simon then stammered out a question. We have to know all of this. Dick calmly replied, of course. Then he pointed to the paper and said, so we need to recruit the kids on this list. Dick stated firmly, if we can't get one, we'll get another. And we have to emphasize that our group has the top student from the special admissions. Understand? Hearing that, he nodded and said, "Got it." Finally, he declared spiritedly, "Then let's go claim our victory." Simon, equally fired up, added, "For our victory." Now Simon sat alone in a corner, clutching his head and muttering victory. Meanwhile, Dick wondered, why is she in a first-year class? Hearing this, Simon asked curiously, "Who is she?" Glancing at her, he introduced, "That's Olivia. She's the vice principal of Kaizen, a walking terror who's even expelled third years." Suddenly, a powerful voice rang out Dick Haywood, making Dick's heart skip a beat. Olivia calmly announced, "Mr. Haywood, life is unpredictable. If you say another word, I'll consider it cheating and invalidate your exam." He quickly responded, "I'm sorry, ma'am." The other students were on the same page as Dick, all of them staring at Olivia full of questions. Just then she spoke up. "I'm sure, just like Haywood, the rest of you are wondering why I'm here." Olivia paused for a moment, then continued, "As you know, until now, I have only taught third-year students. So some of you might think I'm just a substitute, but this semester I will be officially in charge of Class 1A. She warned coldly, "I expect you to work hard and not disappoint me with your lack of skills." Finally, Olivia concluded, "For now, focus on finishing your test." They had no choice but to obediently answer, "Yes, ma'am." Meanwhile, a stream of negative thoughts began to surface in Simon's mind. I don't understand any of these questions. Even so, he tried to console himself, thinking, all right, this is reality. At least some things are going my way since I have my father's undead legion. But then Simon's thoughts turned grim. It doesn't mean I'll adapt to Kaizen easily. Soon after, his spirit flared up in defiance. But I can't give up without even trying. And so Simon boldly declared he would do his best until the very end. A while later, the bell rang, signaling that the exam time was over. At the same time, Jane spoke up, "I hope you all did well. I'll see you 2 hours after lunch." Before all the students left, she politely added, "You all worked hard." Next, Jane placed the stack of test papers in front of her and said, "All right then." She picked up her pen and announced time to start grading. The student assistants replied, "Yes, Professor." While the other senior students were working diligently, Neptys suddenly appeared, beaming as she approached. As Jane was concentrating hard on grading, her voice suddenly rang out, "What brings you here?" Knowing she was caught, Neptys didn't bother hiding and replied openly, "I just came to visit." Their moods were polar opposites. One was cheerful while the other was serious. Seeing that her presence was becoming a distraction, Jane slammed her hand down and warned, "Stop being a distraction." While Neptys was clutching her head in pain, Jane turned to the students and said, "Let's go to the grading room to finish this." They replied, "Yes, ma'am." Neptys then yelled, "When I met you in the slums, you were such a pure and cute girl." Jane immediately retorted that pure girl turned into this, because of the stress of overworking every single day. Finally, she let out a long sigh and suggested, "Since you're here anyway, why don't you go grade the papers?" As her pen flew across the unfortunate student's papers, Jane suddenly stopped. Her eyes widened in surprise at the test in front of her. Stunned, Jane thought to herself, this student got most of the basic questions wrong, but answered the hardest one. With that, she called out, "Neptys, I have a question." She looked up from the paper she was grading and asked, "What is it?" Jane swiftly peeled off the paper covering the name on the test and demanded, "Why did you assign me to teach the first years?" As she spoke, she held up the test paper. "Not just any other class." Jane paused for a moment before finishing, "but the one with this boy in it." Upon hearing that, Neptys glanced at Simon's name on the paper and gave a meaningful smile. Then she couldn't help but ask, "Why are all of these names covered?" Jane explained, "I cover them to avoid any bias in my grading." Hearing this, Neptys remarked, "But it's only the first test of the semester. Isn't that a bit excessive?" "You're something else," Neptys said. But Jane countered, "Even if it's just one test, there are a few interesting ones in this batch. For example, the test you're scribbling on. The student answered question 2 about ingredient toxicity correctly, but got the comparison question below it wrong." She agreed, saying, "I see that." "How utterly foolish. It makes me curious to know their name." Jane paused, then said excitedly, "But this one is the complete opposite," as she looked through it. This student got most of the basic questions wrong, but attempted to answer question 20, the hardest one. A surprised Neptys blurted out, "Really?" Jane continued her assessment. "All the formulas this student used are wrong. Ancient runes for dark thermodynamics, the skeletal model equation for summoning. Calculating enfeeblement and cursing arts, all of it is wrong." Neptys just listened, dumbfounded. Then Jane offered a hypothesis based on the formulas they used. "It seems they haven't taken the previous lessons and are just combining and inferring answers based on last week's classes." Neptys wondered aloud. "They used a summoning formula for a question about dark mana flow calculation. Do they possibly think resistance is proportional to dark mana loss?" She replied, "Perhaps so." Looking at the test, she asked then, "What about this answer?" Jane answered, if you use Tehran's theorem, the correct answer is 1,000,200, but this student wrote. She paused, then said 1,200,146. It's not the correct answer to this question, but they managed to deduce a close approximation. As she finished speaking, Jane took the test from Neptus's hand and said, Neptus, I want to ask you something. She casually ripped off the name tag and pressed, why did you assign me to a first-year class? Jane held up the test paper and added calmly, not just any class. And the owner of this test is none other than Simon. Hearing Jane finish with, but it had to be the class with this kid in it, Neptus just smiled slyly. Then she winked mischievously and replied, I have no idea what you're talking about. Faced with Neptus's unconvincing denial, Jane was speechless. She sighed deeply and thought, I knew it. She's so cunning, just like a 300-year-old fox. Sometime later, the students were buzzing with chatter. I got an 85 in theology. Damn it, hematology pulled down my average. Rick, looking pale, remarked they've finished grading already. Simon agreed, I know right. Just then, a student cheered my average is over 80. This is awful. Should I switch majors? Let's see, my score is... Oh, there are my scores. Why were there so many 5s in combat magic? I knew I shouldn't have changed my answer. After a moment of searching, Simon found his scores too. Aside from summoning, his other scores weren't great. He thought with a gloomy sigh, I thought I was prepared for this. But it still stings to see it in writing. Rick tried to comfort him, saying, hey, but look at your summoning score, it's really high. That's impressive, especially since you missed the earlier classes. Finishing his sentence, he clapped Simon on the shoulder and said, besides, I told you yesterday, it's better to be a master of one thing than to be average at everything. Hearing that Simon dejectedly asked, you think so? After saying that, he turned and asked, how about you? Are your scores all right? Rick casually replied, my highest was 74 in Dark Mana Studies. The rest are between 60 and 70, so my average is about 70. Hearing this, Simon stammered in praise. You're pretty smart. I feel so betrayed. He immediately denied it, not really. I just study enough so I don't get kicked out. Then Rick changed the subject. Hey, there's a slight problem with our plan. What do you mean? Simon asked. In a low voice, Rick said everyone's scores were posted during the first class today. Then he explained further. Our plan was only effective before this information was made public. Now that the scores are out, everyone knows their own capabilities. As he was rambling on about how it would be incredibly difficult to recruit anyone now, a voice suddenly called out attention. Jane stood there and announced coldly, I'm giving you all 30 minutes starting from now. She paused, then added, check your scores and form groups of 4. Barring any special circumstances, these groups will be maintained until the end of the semester. From now on, basic dark magic will be taught in groups. The students stared in surprise, but she calmly continued, there will be group assignments that can only be completed through the cooperation of all members. You will receive separate individual and group scores. Naturally, points will be deducted if you fail to demonstrate. Good teamwork, regardless of your individual skill. Finally, Jane concluded, in other words, you need to choose your teammates carefully. Understood. The moment she finished speaking, the students erupted into a clamor to find group members. Jasmine, is Jasmine here? Looking for 3 people, good at theology and dark mana studies, 60 points or more. Can I join a group? I'm good at spirit studies. The calls for recruitment continued. Let me join, my average is 60. Combat magic. Anyone need someone skilled in combat magic? Meanwhile, Simon thought to himself, Rick said he'd invite James, our top priority. Claudia is our second choice. But as he glanced over, he cursed inwardly, damn it, she's already in a group. So he moved on to the next target. Rosenthal, priority number 3, and Catherine, priority number 4, are already in a group together. Seeing things were getting out of hand, Simon quickly told himself to calm down. No group has 4 members yet. Everyone is rushing because of the 30-minute time limit. As he searched, he calmly analyzed that the person they needed most was someone good at theology. Most groups had about 3 members with average scores, while the top students were still observing the situation, Simon thought with a tense expression. So the choice I should make right now is... He then quickly approached Malin, who was sitting aside, observing Simon calmly made his offer before the surprised eyes of his classmates. Melin Villan, I would like to invite you to our group. The other students were stunned, wondering, did he just invite Malin? She is the only one with an average score above 90. Melin casually remarked, funny. You think special admission is a free pass or something? That just means you have good connections. After saying that, she added, and I only believe in the numbers in front of me. You want to invite me to your group, someone with an average score of 30. Not only was Simon unashamed, he replied decisively yes at this. Melin calmly said, I see you're quite good at summoning. That's the only 80 you have. He ignored the gossip and casually replied, you too. She retorted, But my score is higher than yours, Simon, then proposed again, I know, so let's make a bet, then he said with great enthusiasm. 1 month, give me 1 month. And I will surpass you in summoning if I can't, then I'll leave Kazan. This was beyond Melin's imagination, making her exclaim, what? Melin immediately stood up and said, you're crazy, take that back. If you don't want to make things hard on yourself, but Simon firmly replied, no, I only say things I can actually do. Hearing that, she didn't know what else to say, but sigh helplessly after that. The two of them fell into a deep silence, neither intending to speak first. Meanwhile, Melin thought to herself, I need to maintain my top position in the class this semester. No matter what she believed, the biggest obstacle was Hatter. I can beat him in written exams, but not in practical combat and performance evaluations. Next, Melin calculated to herself to beat him. I need to win the group assignment. That means I need someone good at summoning the only subject I'm weak in. She then thought of the brilliant achievements of the #1 special admissions student, Simon Florentia, who defeated Hatter despite missing the previous classes. Melin was now very conflicted. Should I look for another student with over 80 in summoning, or bet on the special admissions student who won? Finally, she broke the silence. That promise you just made. Melin asked suspiciously, are you sure you'll keep it? He replied with certainty, yes. Simon held out his hand and smiled, promising no matter what, I will keep my word. However, she was still hesitant and just stared at his outstretched hand, without saying a word. After a moment of thought, Melin took his hand and said, all right, I'll join your group. As soon as she finished speaking, Dick rushed over to hug him and cheered. Simon, you're a real problem solver. How did you get Melin to join? Melin saw this and wondered, wait, who are you, Simon? Then explained he is also a member of our group. I just invited you to our group. Don't worry, we have a D rank and an S rank in theology and dark arts. Hearing that, Melin felt her world collapse and sighed helplessly. Oh my God, then she relented. All right, I'll do my best. But I won't forgive you if you drag me down, especially you. The deadweight Dick retorted. What do you mean, deadweight? That's harsh, while Simon just chuckled happily. Soon, Melin's voice was heard again. You said D and S are covered right then. I'll handle theology since we need to allocate KDS. Then she interrogated, but first tell me your dark arts score. Dick casually replied, an average of 70-74 in dark arts. Melin heard this and commented flatly, not bad. Next, Dick said cheerfully, you're picky, aren't you? Who should we recruit for the last member? Just say it. I'll find that person for you, while Melin calmly replied, I'm good at everything, so I don't really. He quickly urged, come on, you have to choose someone. So she had to reply, if possible, someone who can handle hematology. It's time-consuming and requires a lot of calculation. Hearing that, Dick promised enthusiastically. Hematology, you got it, just wait here. I'll be right back, you two just rest. On the other side, the other students saw Melin and Simon sitting together waiting for Dick and started gossiping. Are those two in the same group? Special admission and the class top in the same group, it's over then. Not necessarily. The special admission student scores aren't even that high. Just then, she suddenly spoke, hey. Simon heard that and turned to look at Melin, who continued coldly, your name is Simon Florentia, huh? I've never heard that name. Where is your family from? He replied. I am the succeeding Baron of the Bardwin Kingdom. My family governs the Les Hill region. She thought to herself, Bardwin, huh? I see. Next, Simon also asked curiously, what about you? What kind of family is Velon? She didn't answer right away, but seriously confirmed, are you asking seriously? Simon let out a cheerful, huh? Then Melin introduced herself with a less than friendly tone. I'm from a renowned family with deep roots in the Ivory Tower. He immediately asked again, the Ivory Tower, you mean the Magic Tower? She coldly replied, that was 300 years ago. Ben went oh while he excitedly said that's Son, the second-ranked special admission student. Then Melin suddenly said, excuse me. Her killing intent was almost palpable, but she still asked politely, could you please stop there? Please, Simon saw this and stammered, okay.